Chapter 2664. Authentic or Fake 4. Yinshin continued to stare at the backs of the two persons who were walking away. Subconsciously, his fingers could not help but tighten under his sleeves. Although he already made up his mind that the woman was not Little Fox, seeing her being held by another man still made him uncomfortable. He felt the urge to rush over and separate them. "Brother Yinshin, can we go elsewhere?" Lan Weihu tugged his sleeves as she asked. "Okay." He nodded and took his attention away from the two people. The reason why he was uncomfortable was that the woman looked like Little Fox. Nonetheless, he knew that he should not take his wife for granted anymore. Yinshin felt that he should no longer waste his attention on the woman. Instead, he should be analyzing the facilities here so that he and his team could plan a way to take the enemies down. A little while later, Yinshin was pacing through the entire area. Lan Weihu could hardly catch her breath as she tried to keep up with him. "Brother Yinshin, can you slow down?" The man halted his steps and just realized that he had left Lan Weihu behind. Lan Weihu dashed over and hugged his arm rightly. She gently complained, "I am pregnant. Why are you walking so fast?" Yinshin sighed and took her hand. "Shijio did not come back. I'm worried about her. We need to find her. I think we better not act rashly." Shijio said that some of the high-tech mechanisms here could expose our invisibility. "I believe she asked us to stay put earlier." Yinshin paused for a moment to try to recall what Gu Shijio had told him earlier. Before they separated with her, she did warn him about it and asked him to stay close with Little Fox. He should not even be one step ahead of her. However, he could not see Gu Shijio anywhere around the hangar area. "Do not worry. Shijio is so powerful. She will be fine. If we go and find her, it will actually alert the other party, and it might even bring trouble to her." Lan Weihu comforted him. With a smile, Yinshin complimented Lan Weihu. "Little Fox, you are so sensible." If it were the old Little Fox that he knew, she would have eagerly asked him to go and look for Gu Shijio. She would never say such wise words. Apparently, Little Fox had grown up, and he was the one who grew emotional and rash. Two of them discussed the matter softly and then turned and went elsewhere. Along the way, Yinshin quietly observed and marked down the layout of the place. But all of a sudden, there was a loud sound in front of them on the left. Someone screamed, "Princess, drink it, drink it." Stunned, Yinshin could not help but go over and take a closer look. Lan Weihu quickly tried to stop him. "Brother Yinshin, there are many people there. We shouldn't go there now. Otherwise, we risk being uncovered." "It is fine. They can't see us." Yinshin continued walking and reached the crowded place very soon. He realized that he had arrived at a restaurant. In fact, Yinshin used to come to this restaurant with Lan Weihu in the past. They used to get a few drinks here every now and then. The restaurant had not changed much since the last time he came. Yinshin stepped inside with Lan Weihu and saw the princess sitting at a table. She was sitting at a table with 7 or 8 other officers, along with a man who was seated beside him. The group was having a drink there and playing a drinking game. Apparently, the princess lost the most recent round. According to the rules of the game, the loser would drink. Hence, that explained why he heard the loud noises urging the princess to drink. Someone also shouted, "If the princess does not want to drink, she can sing a song for us instead." The princess did not speak. Instead, she raised her hand and gulped down the wine in her glass. Seconds after, she slammed the glass on the table and extended her slim hand to the group. "Pour me another glass." Chapter 2665. Were they trying to get her drunk? The princess is so sporting. Those men raised their thumbs at her in acknowledgement. The people who often carried a knife and were exposed continuously to blood generally had strong and imposing characters. They also admired down-to-earth and straightforward people. Initially, they thought that the princess was a snobbish person. Furthermore, to them, besides her status as princess, there did not seem to be anything special about her. Hence, they never looked up to her before until now. Feeling more at ease with her, the group grew livelier throughout the game. Meanwhile, Yinshin squinted his eyes and followed the princess' every move. Even with Lan Weihu tugging at his sleeve the entire time, it failed to grab his attention back to her. 15, 20. 7 to 8 pairs of palms continued to change their gestures from time to play the game. It was the most basic game that one could play with their hands. Being the only female playing the game, the prince's delicate palms clearly stood out among the muscular hands of the men. Even though Yin Chun was distracted by the princess, after some time, he seemed to find the game somewhat familiar to him. Moments later, his heart suddenly shook as he remembered why he felt that way. In the past, when Gu Shijio first entered Tianju Hall and became good friends with Little Fox and Qian Lingyu, she used to teach Little Fox this game. Little Fox tried to explain the game to him once, but they ended up playing other drinking games instead. It had been more than 200 years ago since that day. If not for Yin Chen's good memory, he probably would never have been able to recall it. But who taught them this game? Did all the people from the Blue Fox planet would know how to play it? Or was it explained to them by the princess? Yin Shun analyzed the win rate of the princess and noticed that she had lost twice in the space of just a few rounds. Following the rules, she dried up 2 glasses of wine without any hesitation. Her pale but pretty face was turning rosy, but her eyes started to light up with some bright colors. Finally, Yin Chun turned to look at Lan Weihu, who was beside him. Little Fox was not good at drinking. In fact, every time she drank, she would only take a few sips and then pass the glass over to Yin Chun to finish it. Hence, it was getting clearer to Yin Chun that the woman he saw earlier was not Little Fox. After reaching this conclusion, Yin Chun was somewhat relieved but also a little disappointed. It didn't make much sense for him to watch a group of people drinking. Therefore, Yin Chun knew that he should leave the restaurant and continue to explore the base. Nonetheless, somehow, his feet were stuck to the ground. He did not want to go. When he saw the princess drinking, he had the subconscious urge to take away her cup. It seemed like she just recovered from a severe illness. Could she drink liquor like this? Yin Chen's gaze then turned to the guardian, who was next to the princess. The man always smiled faintly and swirled the glass of wine in his hand while watching the games unfold. It was only when the princess had drunk 7 or 8 glasses of wine did the guardian attempt to stop her. Princess, you should stop drinking now. You are not in good condition. The princess pushed his hand away. I have recovered. You don't have to be concerned about me. She downed another glass of wine then and there. Princess, you are so cool. Princess, I didn't expect you to be so sporting. I apologize for what I had said just now. Let me toast with you. A bearded officer stood up and toasted. The princess did not speak, but raised a glass with the officer and finished another glass of wine. Princess, I had also offended you earlier. Let me toast with you too. Me too. Me too. These bastards. Were they trying to get her drunk? Yin Chun had clenched his fists so tightly that his fingertips had turned cold. Chapter 2666. Who are you? As Yin Chun continued to observe the princess, Lan Weihu sat obediently by his side. It was indeed a rare sight for her to be so calm and quiet. She had focused her attention on the princess guardian and watched his every move. Meanwhile, the princess had not refused any of the toasts from the group. She gulped a mouthful of wine every time someone toasted with her, and in the blink of an eye, she had drunk around 5 or 6 glasses. Although her wine glass was of an average size of about 50 milliliters, a dozen glasses were enough to fill her belly. It was almost 700 milliliters of liquor. Even an ordinary man would have been half drunk by now. The princess' cheeks were red as apples, but her lips were pale. The guardian finally grasped her hand that was holding the glass and stopped her from taking another sip. You should stop now. The princess was already drunk by then. She squinted at him and asked, Why should I listen to you? Sir, does it hurt to get embarrassed by a woman? Huh. Sir, this beauty is more interesting when she is drunk. Sir, since you care about her so much, why don't you just marry her? If that were to happen, you would be considered royalty on the Blue Fox planet. Huh. Some officers started to tease them. The guardian did not seem too disturbed by what he heard. He calmly raised his eyebrows and smiled at the princess. Princess, are you interested in me? Do you want to marry me? The princess looked at him and was stunned by what he uttered. She responded rather indifferently. Okay. Uh, she decided to stand up for a moment, but as she was too drunk, she tripped and fell into the arms of the guardian. That guardian managed to support her fall and quickly asked, "Are you all right?" The princess held his face and tilted her head while she looked at him. "You are so handsome." The guardian was somewhat taken aback by her words. "Thank you, princess." She continued to look at him confusedly and blinked a couple of times. Who? Who are you?" The guardian was speechless. Meanwhile, the people around him could not help themselves. They laughed at his misery. "Duan Mayan, Duan Mu, handsome. You look very handsome. But why? Why do you have two heads? This makes you less attractive." Duan Mayan rendered speechless again. The crowd was thoroughly enjoying themselves. Everyone laughed again, and even Lan Weihu giggled at Duan Mayan's misfortune. She then turned to look at Yin Shun and was stunned. Yin Shun did not find the situation funny. On the contrary, his face was pale, and his eyes were still fixed on the princess. His lips trembled. Little fox. Lan Weihu was rarely drunk, but she did get drunk before on certain occasions. Yin Shun had been married to her for so many years, so he had seen it several times. When she was drunk, she did not recognize people. The most common thing she did when that happened was to lay in his arms and hold his face. She would always ask him, "Who are you?" When she held his face, her little finger was always curled up. The drunk princess seemed to imitate this action flawlessly. Even the curled little finger and the expression of squinting her eyes were the same. Watching all this unfold made Yin Shun feel as though a bolt of lightning had struck him. He forgot where he was and shouted out loud in the heat of the moment. Unfortunately, he was not using his directed audio device. Although he was relatively far away, his voice was loud enough to alarm the group of people he was observing. Who was that? Who spoke earlier? There was no one else in the restaurant beside them. Naturally, the group paid close attention to the direction of the source of the sound, which was where Yin Shun was located. However, they did not see anything. Chapter 2667. Stealing the target. Duan Mayan also looked over as well. While they were distracted, Yin Shun suddenly rushed forward and grabbed the princess' wrist. In a second, he had pulled her into his arms and out of Duan Mayan's grasps. "Who's there? Gosh, is this place haunted?" Although everyone could not see Yin Shun, they were able to see that their princess was pulled away. Duan Mayan could not see Yin Shun, but he launched an attack toward her back. Given that Duan Mayan was obviously very skilled, Yin Shun's arm was badly hurt and felt as though it was broken. Despite the pain, he was still holding the princess tightly and did not let go. He knew that he could not use his spiritual power. Otherwise, he would be exposed. It would undoubtedly be a suicidal action because the officers had already taken out their guns. With him still invisible, they were afraid of accidentally injuring the princess, so they did not dare to shoot. Thinking on their feet, they decided to take out their infrared devices to try and locate their seemingly invisible target. Without any delay, Yin Shun carried the princess and ran away. He had forgotten about the Lan Weihu, who was initially with him. The group watched as their princess was rushed out the door with her feet definitely off the ground. All they could do was to yell while they chased after her. Moments after they emerged from the restaurant, there was a loud sound coming from the direction of the hangar. Huge flames were visible, and smoke could be seen rising into the air. The officers' facial expressions had changed. They knew the building that was on fire was the place where they kept all their warships. What happened? Before they could think of anything, a bright red firework rose from that direction, and a sharp alarm sound could be heard as well. To the people from the Blue Fox planet valued those warships as much as their own lives. The warships were their most advanced weapons. Naturally, they could afford to lose them. Therefore, they did not have time to chase the princess. Instead, they rushed toward the hangar at once. The entire base of the Blue Fox clan was in a state of chaos. All the soldiers were running around the building, trying to fix the situation. Meanwhile, Yin Shun was carrying the princess and running wildly. At that moment, his mind went completely blank. There was only one thought in his heart. He needed to rescue the princess and get her out of this place. Fortunately, Even though he was clearly out of his mind, his natural instincts were to take cautious steps. Therefore, he naturally chose the route with the fewest people. In fact, he did not encounter any other soldiers on his way to the entrance to the clan. He had reached there very swiftly since there were no obstructions in his path. The base of the Blue Fox clan was difficult to enter but easy to exit. Therefore, it was not a challenging task for him to escape. A quarter of an hour later, he had already brought the princess into a vast jungle in the mountains. There were very few pedestrians in the area due to the large number of wild beasts that were present. Presently, a large number of wild rabbits were in the vicinity. Instinctively, Yinshin looked for a quiet place where he could rest. Soon, he found himself standing still under a cliff and could only hear the sound of running water as well as the wind blowing through the treetops. Having finally escaped the frantic state that he was in, Yinshin suddenly realized that he did not bring Lan Weihu out with him. He had left her in the base. Ow! The princess in his arms was dizzy due to the bumpy journey that they had. She vomited on him profusely. Yinshin remained silent. He was actually obsessed with cleanliness, so his body was usually dust-free. At this moment, he had vomit all over him. The wine that the princess drank earlier, as well as some undigested food, dripped down his chest. The smell was unpleasant. Chapter 2668. He gave her a fatal blow. If someone else had vomited on him, Yinshin would have thrown that person at least 800 miles away. However, it was her. Strangely, he did not feel uncomfortable at all. In fact, he only felt angry and distressed. Swiftly, he put her on the ground so that the dirt on his body would not get on her too. The princess was so drunk that she could hardly even stand straight. Yinshin had to support her the entire time. He looked around and saw a big boulder next to them, so he helped her to sit on the rock momentarily. As she was not very conscious, he did not dare to let go of her. He could only hold her with one hand while he took off his dirty robe with his other hand. To his surprise, when the princess saw him undress, she was startled and struggled to get free from him. She blurted, I'm pregnant. I cannot do." Yinshin's body froze as he looked at her. "You? What are you talking about?" The princess curled up her body on the ground and looked at him. Her small mouth was slightly ajar. Her pitiful eyes made her look somewhat confused. "Brother Yinshin, can we not?" It was such a familiar rejection for the man. Yinshin's heart pounded in his chest. His fingers trembled as he quickly reached out to touch her face. Her skin was warm and delicate, but her cheekbones were a bit hard compared to before. This woman had clearly slimmed down a fair bit. The sense of familiarity made Yinshin feel as though he was being stabbed in the chest. His voice was hoarse as he replied, "All right, little fox. We're not going to do anything. Little fox, you know I will never force you." The princess seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. She pouted her small mouth and exhaled. Then, she closed her eyes and raised her eyebrows at him. I am not feeling well." This was another familiar statement to Yinshin. Although she did look slightly different, her actions and her semi-conscious state were generally the same as Lan Weihu that he knew and loved. Yinshin threw away his dirty robe and patted her shoulder to signal her to lean on him. "Little fox, don't be afraid." She vomited on him once more. Yinshin was stunned. This time, he did not rush to change his clothes, but bent over and grabbed her. One of his hands was pressing on her acupuncture point, while the other was patting her back to help her to throw up. This method of inducing vomiting proved to be highly effective. She vomited several times in a row until she could not even straighten her waist. Unfortunately, most of her vomit was on Yinshin's body. Finally, she stopped vomiting. Yinshin took a blanket from his storage space and laid it on the big boulder next to them. He laid her on it and covered her up to keep her warm. He wiped her mouth and cleaned her up slightly before changing his clothes again. He was filthy all the way from innerwear to his skin. This required him to use the cleaning spell in order to feel comfortable again. Soon, his attention returned to the princess again. She was already fast asleep. However, she appeared to have a frown on her face. Yinshin sat next to her and took one of her hands. He murmured, "Little fox," before he continued. He could already see that her wrists were thin like bones. The sight pained him to his core. Ash was now quite confident that this was the real little fox, his wife that he had loved for more than 200 years. She had come to him, but he gave her a fatal blow. Yinshin felt very guilty for doing so. He reached out his hand and wanted to tidy up her messy hair, but her little face suddenly squirmed. The princess quickly turned over and vomited again. However, this time, it was not liquor but blood. Chapter 2669. The arrival of Celestial Master is with a bloody red liquid felt like needles piercing his eyes. Little Fox, his heart ached, and his face turned pale. It felt and looked as if he was the one who had vomited blood. He held her fingertips gently and trembled as he asked, "Are you okay? How could she vomit blood? Was it from the injury that he had inflicted on her?" He quickly checked her pulse to assess her condition. After a while, his fingers clenched tightly, and he had the urge to stab himself with a knife. Unfortunately for Yin Shun, he was sure that her condition was of his own doing. It seemed that his palm had almost cut off the vein that brought blood to her heart. There was even a possibility that it had been cut off, but perhaps it was pieced together by someone. Naturally, it was expected that her heart would feel rather weak, fragile. There was also a risk that her recovery might be stunted if she did not look after the wound. She needed to rest for at least half a year after suffering from such an injury. Yet, she was already up and about, and even drank such a large amount of liquor. Her actions were pretty much a way for her to commit suicide. Everything felt strange to Yin Shun. He vividly recalled the day that he had launched his attack toward Lan Weihu. Due to his overprotectiveness of Lan Weihu, he was angry that the enemy had used a clone of her against him. Nonetheless, even though he handed a powerful attack on her, subconsciously, he did not really want to take her life. He clearly remembered that he controlled the power of his attack, which was why he was rather confused at how fatal it appeared to be at the moment. Suddenly, Yinshin recalled the conversation that he had with Lan Weihu when they had bumped into each other. She had told him that she had been tortured for nearly a month before she escaped. Perhaps she was already weak at the time, which was why she was hurt so badly by him. Yin Shun felt a sense of remorse for his action. He could not help but raise his hand to hold her in his arms. He held her tightly and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Little Fox, I am sorry." Lan Wei's face was ashen. Nonetheless, after she vomited some blood, she opened her eyes slightly. She wheezed for a moment before she turned her attention to Yin Shun and asked him, "Who are you?" Yin Shun was speechless. He took a light breath before he introduced himself, helplessly. "I am Yin Shun." "Yin Shun," Lan Weihu whispered in a flat tone. It seemed to be emotionless. "Which Yin Shun?" Yin Shun remained silent for a moment. He looked at her crystal-clear eyes and continued. "Your husband, Yin Shun." Lan Weihu tilted her head and slightly and pouted. She seemed very confused. "My husband? He does not want me anymore." Yin Shun was stunned by her reply. He held her hand again and continued. "Little Fox, I have never not wanted you. I just mistook you for the wrong person. I will always want you. You mistook me for the wrong person." Lan Weihu still murmured and somehow still looked confused. "But how can he not recognize me? He is my husband, who's been with me for more than 200 years. He often said that even if I peel my skin off, he would recognize my bones. I obviously have not changed. Furthermore, not only did he recognize me, he even attacked me. He does not want me anymore." She seemed to fall into a nightmare midway through the conversation and continued mumbling. All her words were like knives stabbing through his heart. The pain from each sentence felt worse than the last. "He's a bastard. Little Fox, I am sorry. I didn't like to do that kind of thing, but he likes to do it. I know that he was unhappy because I did not enjoy being intimate. I'm also trying to overcome this psychological obstacle. I almost succeeded, but I have a baby. I cannot do it when I am pregnant. It is not my intention to push him away, but somehow he left me. He did not even sleep in the same room as me. He was cold to me and didn't care about me. I am very sad." Yinshin closed his eyes and whispered, "Little Fox, I was not angry at you. I was not being cold to you. I was just afraid that I could not control myself. I did not want you to hate me, so I tried to stay away from you to free myself of any urges. I didn't expect you to misunderstand. Lan Weihu still had her eyes closed. It really looked as though she was having a nightmare. Chapter 2670. The Arrival of Celestial Masters with 2. With her eyes closed, Lan Weihu continued. He went out with his men in search of food. I was worried about him, so I tailed them. I wanted to help, but ended up being captured. They took me into a ship and tied to a pillar. They made fun of me and even insulted me. Then I saw him by the window. He passed by the ship, so I quickly cried out loudly, hoping that he would hear me. I wanted to get his attention, but he never looked my way. Yin Chen listened quietly, but his heart ached with her every word. He knew that she was recalling the incident of the day she was taken away. He had heard her calling out to him, and he went looking for her, which led him all the way to the fake Lan Weihu, who he had brought back instead. They almost raped me that day. I just wanted to die. But suddenly, they stopped harassing me and took me to the base of the Blue Fox family. They told me that we used to be people of the same race about 10,000 years ago. They told me to help my own kind by spilling the secrets to opening Tianju Hall's wizardry barrier. I refused, so they sent me into a pitch-black ice cellar. Yen Chun felt terrible. He knew how much she was scared of the cold and the dark. Those bastards seemed to have noticed her weaknesses. She must have been so scared while being held captive, all alone in the dark. The ice cellar was so dark and so cold. I tried to meditate to keep the cold away, but my thin clothes were not very helpful. I was frozen in fear, but I could not cry, for all my tears would become icicles and hurt my eyes even more. In the ice cellar, there were also needles that they would use to poke at me every few hours. Lan Weihu subconsciously curled her body into a ball. She was once again trapped in her darkest and coldest days. Those bastards! Tears were rolling in Yin Chen's eyes. They would send someone into my cell every day to ask if I was ready to surrender. I refused to become one of them. I am a disciple of Tianju Hall. I shall never surrender. I shall never betray my friends. I endured the pain, hoping that one day Yin Chun would come and save me. I thought that he would not give up on me. I was sure that he would come. I am sorry. For the entire time that Lan Weihu was held captive, he was out spending time with the fake Lan Weihu. He treated her with care and gentleness. Never had he thought that the woman that he truly loved was actually trapped, waiting for him to save her from a living hell. They kept persuading me. They said if Yin Chen knew that I was the same as them, he would no longer look at me the same way. The people of Tianju Hall would no longer accept me. Yet, they were the only ones who could ensure my survival. I wanted to go back because I knew Yin Chun would never abandon me. He would not abandon me because of something I did not do. But he never showed up, so I thought that something must have held him back or that he was injured. After a month of excruciating pain, they finally got bored of me. They let their guards down, so I took the chance and escaped. I ran away from the base of the Blue Fox family towards Tianju Hall. I kept running and running. I had not eaten anything for days and got very hungry. At some point, I even doubted if I was ever going to make it back to Tianju Hall. Then, I found a rabbit. I was so hungry that I wanted just to drink its blood. Initially, I wanted to grill its meat, but I could not wait any longer. That was when Yin Chen showed up. I was so happy to see him. I could not wait to tell him how badly I had been treated, but he pushed me away. He looked at me like I was trash. Yin Chen closed his eyes in agony. He was trash. He could not even recognize his own wife. Lan Weihu continued. He said that I was an imposter and told me that his wife had never left his side. He said he loved her, which left me so frustrated. Chapter 2671. The Arrival of Celestial Masters 3. I am his wife. That woman must die. I told him I was going to kill her, and he returned my fury with a fatal blow. I was dying on the ground, but he did not care. He turned away from me and swiftly left. He did not want me anymore, really. He did not intend to save me. I had just escaped from a living hell, yet he chose to attack me and send me back there. Feeling guilty, Yin Chen hugged her tightly, with tears dripping on her forehead. I am sorry. He is a bastard. He is a useless piece of junk. He found another woman and no longer wanted me around. Lan Weihua murmured. No, it has always been you. There is no one else. It is all my fault. Yinshin took a look at her flat tummy, but dared not ask anything about their child. After going through what she had been through, there was no way the baby would survive. It was no wonder that she was left thin and pale after such torment. Yinshin felt the urgent need to nurse her back to health, so he carried her in his arms. Little fox, please forgive me. Give me a chance to make it up to you. Come with me. Make it up to me? Lan Weihua seemed a little lost. She was seemingly still trapped in her nightmare. How do you plan to do that? I will do anything you want, little fox, even if you want me to take my own life. Yinshin suddenly stopped talking as the color faded from his face. A knife was already puncturing his chest towards the core of his body. Lan Weihua casually added, I don't only want your life. I want your heart as well. Yinshin was dumbstruck. He could feel the knife being twisted in his chest. Blood flowed out of his wound like a stream, which completely moistened her tiny hand in red. Her hand was still holding the handle of the knife, though it was slightly trembling. Nonetheless, her grip was firm. Even under those circumstances, Yinshin could easily push her away. However, she was the woman he loved. Hence, he did not do such a thing. Instead, he grasped her by the wrist and asked, Little fox, do you really hate me this much? Lan Weihua's eyes showed that she had no intention of backing down. I hate you so very much. Her tone was unrelenting. He slowly let go of her hand and continued, Little fox, I owe you this much. I will never regret dying in your hands. Lan Weihua started trembling even more. She looked at him intently with a firm intention to kill. Great, now die. She wanted to twist the knife around and push it even deeper into his heart. She wanted him dead, but the plan did not go well. A flash of seven-colored ray suddenly shone down from above, encapsulating Yinshin in a flash of blinding light. He was being pulled away from her. Yinshin could no longer stand on his feet. As soon as he was taken away, the knife slipped out of his wound as well. There was blood everywhere, but amidst the light, he could feel a hand on his chest, trying to apply pressure and stop his wound from bleeding. Yinshin staggered and swayed a little in dizziness. He could somehow see someone in the light. Shijio, I suffered this with on my own will. He still managed to say some words. Only Gu Shijio could launch flashes of seven-colored rays. Hence, he immediately assumed it was her. What an idiot! An enchanting voice could be heard, berating him for his blind commitment. Shocked, Yinshin quickly opened his eyes to see who was really the one helping him. But before he could assess the situation, he was sent across the air and landed on top of a rock. Chapter 2672. The return of Celestial Master, so it was not entirely comfortable on the rock, and his wound was not any better either. However, Yinshin could not care less about the physical discomfort he was experiencing. All he wanted to do was to see who was really there in front of him earlier. More accurately speaking, there were two people. There was a man, along with a child. The man was covered in purple elegance, complemented by a loosely tied, straight hairdo that was secured by a hairband. The embellishment of a fox-eye stone on the hairband completely resonated with his gracefulness. Yinshin did not want to look at the man anymore, for he was already thrown into comparative obscurity by the man's ethereal qualities. The man was looking at him nonchalantly, as if judging his lack of good sense. There was also a boy in the man's arms, perhaps of almost 2 years of age. His bright, watery eyes and little red lips were adorable. The boy was covered in a snowy white robe, looking as exquisite as ever. The boy was also looking at Yinshin, the same way as the man, both judging him for what he had done. However, the boy seemed relieved upon seeing that Yinshin was still alive. He patted his own chest as a sign of relief and said, Luckily, we made it. Father, save him. Don't let him die. Yinshin still could not quite get a grasp of what was happening. Dumbstruck, he said in an almost inaudible utterance, Celestial Master Zhua? The man was Di Fui. The man, who was known to be long gone and immortalized, was looking alive and well in front of him. Yinshin thought that he must be dead. Perhaps that would make more sense. What surprised him even more was the fact that the once arrogant celestial master was now holding a boy in his arms, so closely and securely. The man never let anyone get too close to him, nor would he allow anyone to touch him. "It is me. If you can still recognize me, I will assume that you are not entirely stupid," Di Fui said, mockingly. Nonetheless, there was no time for nonsense. Yinshin's clothes were ripped away by a sudden, unseen force, thus revealing the bloody wound underneath it. Di Fui flipped a white, jade bottle open and held in the air. The bottle then slanted a little to pour some liquid right on the wound. Yinshin quivered for a moment, as it was too painful for him to handle. The liquid medicine burned and tingled his open wound as if it were the strongest kind of alcohol. His complexion went wrinkly and pallid abruptly. Sweat broke out on his forehead, clearly showing that he was miserable. "Is it painful?" Di Fui casually asked. Yinshin wanted him to try the same sensation, so he knew how dumb a question was. Many complaints arose in his head, but he dared not say a word. Celestial Masters was known to be a fussy man, and Yinshin was not ready to pay the price for what he had to say. He answered him honestly, "Yes, it is painful. This is the price of your stupidity," Di Fui commented. Yinshin decided not to say anything more. Di Hao saw Yinshin's pale complexion and could not help but sympathize with him. "Your wife is obviously under the influence of someone else's control. How could you stay so still and let her stab you like that? That was absolutely unwise." Di Hao still spoke with the voice of a child, making him even more adorable to the public. Yinshin looked at him admirably. The boy even talked with the same condescending tone as his father. He could not help but wonder if Gu Shiju knew about the boy. Many questions were beginning to dawn on him. However, he quickly turned his attention back to Lan Weihu, who was now struggling to sit up. She was still the one he cared about the most. Chapter 2673. The Return of Celestial Masters 2. After a moment, Lan Weihu decided to sit still and did not move an inch. It looked like her bodily movements had been restricted by a locking spell. Luckily, she seemed unharmed. In that brief moment, Yinshin finally had the time to realize the severity of his wound. Lan Weihu's knife had almost cut his heart open. Any ordinary mortal would have already been long gone by now. Fortunately, his level 10 spiritual power was the life support that he needed. If Lan Weihu had driven the knife any deeper, nothing would be able to save his life. His wound needed immediate medical attention. There was no time to lose. Di Fui had to leave Lan Weihu aside and assist Yinshin with his injuries first. Di Hao already told him that Yinshin must be kept alive, otherwise bad things are going to happen. Di Hao watched as his father worked on the wound and was perplexed. "Father, his heart is cut. You may need to stitch it up with your spiritual power. Why don't you do it right away?" Di Fui was performing the surgery from a distance. He did not even touch Yinshin. Hence, the operation looked like a show to Di Hao. Di Fui continued to perform the surgery with quick movements on his fingers, sending streaks of spiritual power on the surrounding of the wound. "Your mother gets jealous easily. She will probably feel bad if I touch another person," Di Fui finally explained. Di Hao was speechless. He could not quite understand Celestial Master's reasoning. Medical surgeries often required certain levels of physical contact, which was completely understandable. Moreover, Yinshin was a man. Why would Shijio get jealous of him, anyway? Yinshin was bewildered when Di Fui brought up his mother. Could the boy be Zijia's child? He had never heard about any of it from her. She had never even mentioned the resurrection of Celestial Masters. "Focus," Di Fui urged. "Use the Adumbra mantra to channel the spiritual power in your body to the wound. Keep your mind still and at ease, unless you want to become handicapped." Yinshin kept silent and did as told. Celestial Masters was still the same, unforgiving with his straightforwardness, but what terrified Yinshin the most was that his breathing had slowly become more and more difficult. Yinshin finally realized that he should not let his mind wander anymore. He needed to focus and regulate his vitals like what Di Fui had told him. With his eyes closed, Yinshin could not see what happened next. However, as soon as Yinshin started meditating, Di Hao clearly saw that there was a red bug crawling out of the wound. The bug was only the size of a mosquito, but he managed to catch a glimpse of its pointy mouth that was still glistening like a metal blade. As soon as the bug emerged, it was ready to extend its wings and leaped into the air. However, Di Fui sent a streak of 7-colored ray and wrapped the bug in a bubble of light. Surprisingly, the tiny bug was still floundering about in the grasp of the light. It was powerful enough to shake the bubble. Baffled, Di Fui had never come across the bug, though he had seen many things before. The thing looks hideous. Father, kill it with a needle, Di Hao promptly suggested. Di Fui took a look at Di Hao. He wanted to burn the thing at first, but changed his mind. He took out a needle and pointed it at the hideous bug. The bug tried to avoid it, but could never get any faster than Di Fui's flying needle. Soon, it was punched with a hole in its body and slowly disappeared at the tip of the needle. In the depths of the base of the Blue Fox family, there was a house. Duan Mayan did not join others at the airbase. Instead, he sat in his room on a futon while performing a series of complicated enchantment at his fingertips. A black bowl was placed in front of him. A faint streak of red light steadily encapsulated the black metal bowl. There was a red bug in the bowl that was the size of a tennis ball. Chapter 2674. The Return of Celestial Masters 3. There were many pairs of wings on its body, all flapping simultaneously. Wisps of purple smoke surrounded the bug as its wings flapped on. The smoke then rose into the air as the thin length of threads and disappeared in the dark. The whole scenario was as wicked as it could possibly get. The bug was originally rather still in the bowl, only its wings flapped. Hence, its sudden shivering suggested that some external factor must have triggered it. Duan Mayan was troubled, but it was too late for him to do anything. Pricked by a needle, the bug then lay flat in the bowl and started shrieking in pain. Duan Mayan tried to perform some spells in an attempt to cut off the thin threads, but the bug soon died away in a pool of blood, leaving only a small piece of skin as a sign of its existence. Affected, Duan Mayan's body trembled a little before he spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion turned pale almost instantaneously. All that had happened surprised him. He looked at the bug, which was now only a layer of skin, and clenched his fists in indignation. He closed his eyes in contemplation and started wondering if the man was already here. His arrival was quicker than he had expected. The venomous soul-supporting grudge spell had just been cast not long ago. It was also the first time that he was using it as his secret weapon. He could not understand how the spell was broken in such a short time. The creature was not afraid of fire or any form of physical attack. The only way to kill it was to use a thin needle, formed by the solidification of one's spiritual power. Duan Mayan thought that he was the only one who knew how to kill the creature. Apparently, he was mistaken. Duan Mayan had spent a great amount of time and effort to cast the spell. Therefore, the death of the creature greatly affected him too. After a few quick breaths, he looked at his own hands and could not help but sigh. The condition of the body was no longer as good as he expected. He took a look at the remains of the creature and smiled. There was still hope. A drop of blood was formed in the air and sent directly to the body of the creature. Soon, it seemed to come to life again and reformed its body. Yin Shun was fatally injured. Death was inevitable for him if nothing was done. Fortunately, his life was saved by Di Fui's timely arrival. Di Fui's miraculous procedure had brought Yin Shun back to life. Even the medicine that Di Fui used was made from a very rare kind of herb. Yin Shun was very grateful for Celestial Master's kind help. The amount of treatment that he had received from Celestial Masters was rather generous. Although it was uncomfortable, he had to endure it. It was a sign of recovery. Thank you. He wanted to express his gratitude, but was immediately interrupted by Di Fui. Cut the nonsense. Focus on your meditation. Yinshin said nothing more. He closed his eyes and started meditating. Di Fui slowly walked towards Lan Weihu. The locking spell still limited the movement of her limbs, so she could only move her eyelids. Tears traced her cheeks uncontrollably, but there was no one to wipe the tears away. Swiftly, Di Fui set her free from the spell. Lan Weihu swayed a little in an unbalanced manner before jumping off the rock. She then ran unsteadily towards Yin Shun. "Only go to him if you want him to die faster," Di Fui warned. Lan Weihu stopped moving forward and stared at him blankly. "I did not mean to hurt him." Chapter 2675, The Return of Celestial Masters Wa4, I understand. "So do you hate him?" Di Fui looked at her fixedly as he asked. Lan Weihu went pale at the question, unsure of what to say. She closed her eyes and confessed, "I am not sure, but I never wanted him to die." She looked at her hand and saw the knife that was stained with his blood. Irritated, she wanted to throw the knife away, but seemed to be attached to her palm. She tried to fling it away, but the knife still stayed in her hand regardless of her efforts. Instead, the action of trying to get rid of the knife seemed to inflict pain on her palm. Shocked, she tried to fling the knife away again, but failed. It felt as if her bones were breaking apart with every move. Lan Weihu looked at Di Fui for help. Di Fui stared at her intently with reassuring eyes. It was as if he thought of himself as her savior. What is false cannot be true, and what is true cannot be false. Everything is all but an illusion of our minds. He started speaking in a calm voice. Slowly but surely, the hatred that had been controlling Lan Weihu's mind slowly vanished. Clang! The knife slipped out from her hand. Feeling weak, Lan Weihu sat on the ground to catch her breath. Di Fui propelled another streak of light to enclose Lan Weihu in a bubble. The temperature suddenly dropped drastically, making her feel as if she had just been placed in a pool of cold water. Shivering, Lan Weihu could not help but look to Di Fui for an explanation. However, she realized that he was no longer focused on her condition. Instead, his attention had been diverted to the knife on the ground, which he reached out to with his hand. It had a bronze, golden texture on its blade, engraved with figures that were made from red strands being twisted together, like many tiny bugs crawling together in a mass. The evil feature was extremely unpleasant to look at. Di Fui wanted the knife to be destroyed, but changed his mind due to little Di Hao's request. "Father, I want it." Di Hao reached out his hand and asked for the knife. "Little one, you're only a child, so you should not be carrying this lethal weapon." A faint voice could be heard nearby. Lan Weihu thought that they were the only two persons present, so she was surprised by the third voice. She turned around and saw two creatures standing by the tree, a mussel of rosy pink shells and a beast with a smooth, shiny coat. Astonished, she could not help but wonder, were they the mussel and Lu Wu? Their physical appearance had changed so much. The mussel opened its shells, revealing a handsome young man of 12 to 13 years of age whom she had never met. Concerned, the young man was still watching Di Hao. He was the one who told Di Hao not to keep the knife. Di Hao took a quick glance at him, but did not appreciate his advice. "Father, may I have a look at the knife?" he asked Di Fui. Di Fui was quite puzzled. Ever since they parted ways with Gu Shijio in the Shura world, the boy had been so impatient about leaving the place. He kept urging Di Fui, but never said why. When they finally found the way to descend to the lower bound, specifically to Starry Crescent Land, the first thing that the boy was concerned about was not his mother. Instead, he insisted that they had to come here first. It turns out that they were here just in time to save Yin Chen's life. Di Hao never explained it, but Di Fui could somewhat understand that perhaps Yin Chen and Lan Weihu's involvement seemed to play a great role in changing their tragic fate in the end. The boy seemed relieved that they arrived just in time. The rescue seemed like a crucial event along the timeline from which Di Hao had come from. Also, Di Fui could not resist the pitiful look in his son's eyes, so he passed him the knife. Di Hao held the knife in his little hand. He placed his finger gently on the sharp edge and traced the patterns of the red strands. After a while, the knife suddenly vibrated and cut his finger. Blood started flowing out from his wound at once. Chapter 2676. The Return of Celestial Masters. 5. Be careful, little one. The muscle called out anxiously. Dihao threw him an icy glance. Muscle, if you treat me like a baby again, I'm going to cut you, he said with a sarcastic smile. The muscle remembered something and decided to keep quiet. Meanwhile, Luwu stretched out its paw and gave the muscle a few pats on its shell. Dihao dripped his blood on the red strands, thus initiating a series of twists and turns on the surface of the blade. The entire knife was shaking as a result of the agitation. Soon, the red strands turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared into thin air. The patterns on the knife no longer existed. Dihao protested. What a lousy knife! Father, please destroy it. He then passed the knife to Di Fui, but Di Fui was reluctant to touch it. He used his power to levitate the knife in the air and shattered it with a streak of 7-colored ray. The knife was now a pile of ash that was blown away by the wind. While the two males were busy with the knife, Lan Weihu could feel a sudden change in her bodily condition. A red light could be seen exiting her body. Later, the dark purple tone in her eyes slowly returned to her normal shade of black. She looked at Yinshin again, who was still pale and weak, and then took another look at her own hands that were covered in blood. Her body started trembling in fear. She had almost killed the only man that she had ever loved. In the base of the Blue Fox clan, Duan Mayan was still performing dark magic all alone. He could feel a sudden tingle on his fingertip, which was a sign that something might be going wrong. Soon enough, the dark magic that he was manipulating suddenly withered away and disappeared entirely. Duan Mayan was shocked by what he witnessed. Frustrated, he stood and kept the bowl away in his sleeve. Swiftly, he walked out of the room. Although he found it hard to believe, the man was really here much earlier than he had thought. Apparently, that man had also ruined a very crucial part of his plan. He needed to do something to change it. The hangar in the Blue Fox clan was still in complete chaos. There was a medium-sized battleship flying very close to the ground and shooting out streaks of laser beams almost everywhere. The soldiers of the Blue Fox planet all wanted to destroy the battleship that had gone rogue, so they ran towards other ships, hoping to board them and fight back by all means. However, the battleship never stopped firing at them. Every shot was accurate and aimed to kill. In fact, some shots were able to take the lives of up to 5 soldiers at once due to their close proximity. None of them were able to board ship in time. Furthermore, the weapons that they had with them could not do any significant damage to the ship. Guan Yining watched helplessly as the death toll of his men continued to rise. Moreover, his battleships were severely damaged by the one that had gone out of control. He suspected that it would take at least 1 to 2 months to get them repaired. Nonetheless, what bothered him the most was the death of his men. The soldiers who stayed behind in the base were some of his best. Now, almost all of them were dead. If they insisted on running towards the existing battleships on the ground, only death awaited them. Guan Yining had to call for their withdrawal, even though he was reluctant to lose his battleships. Swiftly, the men decided to look for cover. However, the battleship was still shooting at the soldiers who were running for their lives in hopes that they could outrun it. In the turmoil and chaos of war, Guan Yining heard a buzzing sound from the other end of the airbase. Baffled, he turned around and saw a gigantic, disc-like structure slowly rising into the air. Guan Yining was surprised. It was the general's battleship. As the highest security guarded it, only the general would be granted entry. Since the ship was already rising into the air, the general must have boarded his battleship and was ready to join the battle. Unsurprisingly, the general's battleship was powerful enough to destroy any other ships that the people from the Blue Fox planet possessed. The people hoped that the general's ship would be able to turn the situation around in their favor. As expected, the ship rose into the air and released a streak of blinding blue light at the battleship in the air. In an instant, the battleship was turned into a giant ball of fire. Chapter 2677. Di Fui is past. Great. Yes. Huh. That was awesome. Many cheered for the perfect comeback. They knew the power of the general's ship. Nothing could stop it. Furthermore, under the extreme heat, they expected that the intruder would be burnt along with the ship. However, Guan Yining was still worried, for he had witnessed Gu Zijia's kung fu before. If she was the one who maneuvered the battleship, he knew that she would survive because of her ability to teleport. Understanding Gu Zijia's abilities and seeing that none of his men was able to approach the battleships alive, he activated a special mechanism that would prevent entry into all the other available ships. In doing so, all the ships would be shut down so no one would be able to fly them or fire their weapons. While the others were watching the burning warplane, Guan Yining surveyed his other ships to check on their status. It seemed that none of them were triggered. This made him suspect that the person operating the battleship could be someone else. It was either that or Gu Shijio had hidden somewhere. Where could she possibly be? The Lord was known to appear and disappear mysteriously. This troubled Guan Yining greatly, as there was no way he could predict her next move. The entire troop only had one enemy, and yet she was capable of turning the entire group of highly trained soldiers into a mess. As none of the other warplanes were activated, Guan Yining turned to look at the general's battleship once more. It was still in the air, with no sign of landing. The general had been pushing his men to keep their guards up over the past few days due to his misleading information. However, Gu Shijio never showed up. Therefore, most of his men had started to lose their respect for their superior leader. When the general told everyone that the enemy was coming, all of them treated the news with contempt. They did not take it seriously and continued to have a good time. To their utter surprise, the enemy showed up for real this time, and she had taken many lives. Guan Yining thought that the general must be holding the ship in the air because he was worried that the Lord might still be alive. Perhaps he wanted to take her down once and for all. Guan Yining wished to understand the situation, so he pressed a shiny device on his wrist to talk to the general, but the general never picked up his call. What was going on? Everything could happen in an instant during a war, so the general and his military officers should always be connected. The general once told him that they should always keep open communication unless they were busy commanding for their ship's attack. Since the general's battleship was stationary in the air, there was no reason why he would not pick up the call. Therefore, Guan Yining began to panic and focused his attention on the battleship. A sudden realization struck him. Could the battleship have fallen into the control of the beautiful Lord? Gu Shijio had indeed left the battleship right before it was blown into bits. She witnessed the strength of the main battleship, so the thought of seizing control of the ship struck her interest. She wanted to blow up the entire base. Therefore, she went into the battleship, right using her teleportation ability. If that was the biggest and strongest battleship that the invaders had, so the facilities in the ship must be the best. That also meant that it would be equipped with the safest security measures. The last ship that Guan Yining commanded was equipped with the ability to uncover her invisibility spell. There was also a barrier that could shield them from her attacks. She believed that the same facilities available on the general's ship access that it would be multiple times stronger. Gu Shijio was also prepared for the possibility that she might not be able to enter the ship due to some protective barrier that might be in place. To her surprise, everything went smoothly. In an instant, she was already on board. The floor and walls of the ship were all furnished with silver polishing. There did not seem to be any lights around the place, but the inside of the ship was very well lit. Chapter 2678. Di Fuya's Past 2. Gu Shijio entered one of the rooms in the battleship. While she expected to see walls encased with advanced technology, the place turned out to look more like a home. There was a table, a chair, and even a bed. Also, a black-inked painting was loosely hung on the wall, illustrating the ethereal beauty of a vast, starlit sky. Gu Shijio could not fathom the technique that was used to create the illustration. It looked so surreal, like she was staring right into the vastness of the galaxy. Her head spun a little at the sight of the canvas. Although she was a little startled by the interior design of the ship, she quickly made up her mind to explore the place further. In a brief moment, she could tell at once that no one was there. Had she made a mistake while teleporting? She was certainly not in the main control room of the ship. Had she gone into the bedroom instead? While the place looked like a bedroom, oddly enough, there was no door. Gu Shijio tried to look for an exit, but there was none. Troubled, she decided to use her teleportation ability again. Bang! She did not manage to get out of the room. Instead, she bumped straight into a wall. Fortunately, the wall was not very hard. Furthermore, her protective barrier prevented her from getting injured. She steadied herself, but was still baffled by what was stopping her from teleporting. Was it something in the walls? Without wasting any time, she went around the place and tried every single wall in the room, but could not get past any of them. Apparently, the room was able to disable her teleportation skills. She was indeed trapped. Everything seemed odd. It was easy for her to enter the room just now, but somehow there was no way out. Was it possible that the room was able to permit her entry and yet prevent her from exiting? So far, the best technology that Gu Shijio had encountered as the one which could expose her invisibility spell. Why would her teleportation skill fail? 2. Confused, Gu Shijio decided to explore the room further and sniffed around the room to pick up any clues. The smell felt very familiar to her, like she had smelled something similar before. Nonetheless, she refused to believe that the small room was able to stop her from leaving the place. If there was a way to get in, there must also be a way out, which must be hidden somewhere in the room. She just probably had to find out the mechanism of the place. She wanted to look around, but was distracted by a hissing sound. She turned around and saw a huge screen in place of the canvas that hung on the wall earlier. A video started playing. Gu Shijio was a little puzzled by the sudden activation of the screen. She heaved a sigh. Had she pressed on some kind of remote control? She observed her surroundings and noticed that her hand was pressing down on the surface of a jade table. There was no button or whatsoever on top of it. Troubled, she decided to give the video a look and was shocked by what she saw. The video was not playing a documentary about the technological advancements achieved by the people of the Blue Fox planet. It also was not something men would watch to kill time. It was about a mythology from a long, long time ago. The first image that popped out was the vastness of the galaxy in the background, with many lines that crisscrossed and many dots that connected to one another. Everything seemed connected to one another and slowly revealed a man. Like a newborn, the man was without any clothes to cover his naked body. He simply lay quietly in the darkness. The man seemed to be in the process of being formed from the darkness, with every line of his muscular body being meticulously created. Gu Shijio cursed and turned her eyes away from the screen. She could not look at any other naked man other than Di Fui, despite being quite impressed by the man's perfect body, which was so vividly crafted like the statue of Michelangelo's David. When she looked at the screen again, the man was already well dressed. Gu Shijio could not help but stare at his robes fixedly. She could not figure out what the robes were made of. It seemed to have been made by something as light as a cloud, added with a little blue touch from the sky. The silhouette looked rather simple and loose on his body. As he stood in the wind, the robes danced around majestically. She was impressed by the man's gracefulness. Chapter 2679. Di Fui is past 3. The strangest thing about the video was that every detail of the man, including his robes, was clearly displayed on the screen, apart from his face. There were no facial features on his face, which made it look like a blank canvas. It was a peculiar sight for anyone. Gu Shijio wondered what kind of species this faceless man could be. The things that she witnessed next were a series of events that strongly reminded her of the great myth of when Pan Gu created the world for all of mankind. The man continued to travel without a direction in the great space of millions or even billions of stars. Everywhere around him was impressive emptiness. There was nothing else but him. There were no creatures or living beings anywhere to be seen. Apparently, the man in the video was a god. Every gesture of his could easily affect his surroundings. After a short while of wandering around, he decided to sit down somewhere in the galaxy and started waving his hands out of boredom. Clumps of dust seemed to swirl along with his every wave. He played with the cloud of dust for a while before setting it off into the faraway distance to eventually collide with the desolate, uninhabited planets. Dust fog started swirling around the planets, creating an opaque mass of particles in the air. The man seemed rather fascinated by the result of this action, so he kept creating the same collisions over and over again. Meteorites of different elements were sent to collide with random planets in the area. Gradually, green started to spread across the surface of every planet. Hills and mountains started rising abruptly from the ground, and lakes were formed from the streams within the hills. Animals began to rule the world. Gu Shijio sat and watched attentively as the entire scene unfolded. The whole video felt like an upgraded story of Nuwa and the birth of human beings. However, in this case, the man was both Pangu and Nuwa, for he had achieved two different ambitions at once. According to legend, Nuwa created human beings by molding clay into human figurines, which was different from the theory of evolution. First, he bombarded the planets with many meteorites and let life evolve as it was, just like Charles Darwin's theory of evolution by natural selection. In the video, it seemed that the entire evolution process had been fast-forwarded. It took only a minute to show the beginning of life on Earth up to the point where humans learned to walk on foot. Obviously, humans were not the only advanced species on Earth. There were also half-beast men, birdmen, and even half-insect men. There were many species that she had never even heard of before. Some were even completely beyond her imagination. Even for human beings, they all looked and evolved differently on different planets. Some were as big and muscular as the apes. Some were so tiny that they were only 2 feet tall. There were also people of different external appearances, beautiful ones and hideous ones. Some were born normally with 4 limbs. Others had 7 or 8 limbs. The terrifying sight sent chills down her spine. The creator of the universe would take a tour around each planet once in a while. If he found any species to be unfavorable to his liking, an apocalypse would be dawned on the world to wipe out the entire species so that he could restart with another round of evolution. Gu Shijio continued to stare at the divine force that created the universe and started thinking if this version of the story belonged to the creator of the Blue Fox planet. The contents seemed to suggest that the creator of the universe was savagely violent. Anything that he disliked would be immediately abolished on a catastrophic scale, whether by flooding, fire, or lightning. Lives never mattered to him, as he continued to manipulate the destinies of the living creatures on each planet as he pleased. She stared at the creator and found him to be a little familiar, but she could recall when and where they met. Soon, the creator seemed to have become bored with the stupidity of the creatures that he had created, and he seemed to have grown tired of managing the lives on each planet. So, he started performing a spell amid a cloud of stardust. Slowly, a man's figure could be seen forming under his spell. Gu Shiju gasped in astonishment, for she could not believe her eyes. The man was Di Fui. But how could it be possible? Why would Di Fui be in a documentary from the Blue Fox planet? Chapter 2680. Di Fui is past. 4. Gu Shijio had doubts in her mind about the accuracy of the video from the very beginning. She was actually not too focused on it until Di Fui entered the fray. It had only been a month since they parted ways, but it felt like an eternity. She missed him dearly. It was beyond her expectation to see him again so soon, though only on a screen. She never knew that the creator of the universe also specifically created Di Fui. The fact that Di Fui was created clearly surprised her. She had always thought that the master of heavenly law was born by nature, through a long process of development based on the intrinsic qualities of the universe. Could the contents of the video be true? Or had it been edited with personal biases? Who was the one who made the video? Many questions started to haunt Gu Shijio, but she decided to keep on watching. Di Fui, who was now in his usual purple robes, approached the creator of the universe and cordially bowed before him. The creator of the universe carefully observed the man and was impressed by what he had created. He then gifted Di Fui with a headband, embellished with a red gem that was crafted in the shape of a fox's eye. As soon as Di Fui put on the headband, his entire aura changed. It seemed to have emulated the aura of his creator. The creator of the universe gave him some orders before going into a long, deep sleep in one of the hidden corners of the universe. Di Fui assumed his role and started touring the universe. Di Fui was portrayed as an intelligent man who got connected with people from different planets. They viewed him with the utmost respect and admiration. He was a god to these people. As time went by, his power slowly developed and became just as powerful as his creator. After 10,000 years of sleep, the creator of the universe woke up to a world that he did not recognize. A set of rules governed every world, and every star moved in harmony and concord. Also, the man that he created had become the master of heavenly law in his absence. In a unique space-time, he managed to control all the orbiting planets by using a star chart. Every being must act according to the heavenly law that he had made. Those who violated the rules were punished. The creator of the universe was delighted to see a flourishing and prosperous panoramic sight spreading out before his eyes. He met up with Di Fui and wanted to compliment him for the wealth that he had brought upon the universe. But Di Fui had lost all sense of respect for his creator. Instead, he acted with hostility and violence. They would play chess as friends, but little did he know that Di Fui was always trying to stab him in the back. The creator of the universe did not like that Di Fui was always making arbitrary decisions and peremptory actions, so he wanted to take back control of the universe. However, he could not risk disrupting the perfect harmony that had been governing the balance between each planet for so long. The creator of the universe was not pleased by his loss of power. One day, he was inspired to create a beautiful woman by forging the essence of heaven and earth. When the display slowly zoomed into the appearance of the woman, Gu Shijio was so shocked that she broke a corner of the table. The woman looked exactly like her. The woman was Gu Shijio. She never knew that the creator of the universe also created her. Gu Shijio rubbed her nose in bewilderment. Should she be proud of her heritage? She never knew that she shared the same past as Di Fui. The woman appeared to treat her creator with great respect by acknowledging him as her godfather. In return, the creator of the universe treated her with great care and kindness. He would always explore the galaxies with her and study the culture of the different worlds. Perhaps because they had been together for a long time, they came to have developed feelings for each other. The female characters seemed to have developed a greater sense of admiration for her creator each passing day. She did not hide the thrill of infatuation in her eyes every time she looked at him. Very often, she would hug his arm as they laughed cheerfully together. In return, the creator of the universe thought of her as his source of happiness. The way he looked at her slowly changed as well. Chapter 2681. An exaggerated plot of absurdity. The creator of the universe even gave her a name, Shijio. She had the meaning of being highly valued. As for Jio, it meant long-lasting. Jio was also how the number 9 was pronounced in Chinese. The imperial number was also the highest numerical number before the perfect 10, so it was the closest number to perfection. He named her so because he intended to cherish her for an eternity. Her name was also a sign that she would one day become the imperial and domineering master of the universe. On the screen, Shijio seemed to be highly fond of her name. She expressed great enthusiasm toward him and asked for his name. The creator of the universe thought about it for a moment before uttering his name, Fan Qianshi. The name sounded very elegant and graceful. Only a cultural man would name himself that way. Shijio naturally held the man in high regard. One day, the woman on the screen made a bold confession to the creator of the universe. Dear Godfather, I adore you. May we become husband and wife like the mortals? Gu Shijio was still thinking about the name, Fan Qianshi. The name reminded her of someone she knew, but for the life of her, she could not remember where or when she last heard it. By this time, the creator of the universe finally had a face of his own. If he could create everything in the universe, he could easily create a perfect body with a perfect face for himself. It was flawless from head to toe. However, the more Gu Shijio looked at him, the more she failed to resonate with his perfection. Something was not quite right about the man. Normally, she would be drawn to men with perfect qualities. Even if she were not emotionally attached to him, she would still find a man's perfect appearance to be pleasant to her eyes. On quite the contrary, the perfect-looking man on the screen only looked like a rubber mannequin to her. The sight filled her with disgust. No matter how perfect a rubber mannequin looked, she could not possibly fall head over heels. However, to her surprise, the lady in the video appeared to view Fan Qianshi with the most affectionate sight. Gu Shijio felt her flesh crawl as she saw the scene. She was especially uncomfortable when she heard Zijia's loving confession for Fan Qianshi. Would she fall for the man? It was safe to assume that if she really adored Fan Qianshi in her previous life, the depth of her love for him would surely be passed on to her next life. Meeting him would surely strike a chord in her heart. Just like her first encounter with little Niema in the upper bound, she clearly did not remember anything about him, but she still wanted to get close with him and protect him from all harm. She did not even mind flirting with him, even though he was a kid. In the end, she found herself to be in love with a boy who was so much younger than herself. Looking at Fan Qianshi, Gu Shijio was sure that she felt nothing for him. There were no waves of emotion, nor a single bit of admiration. She decided to sit down on the chair to watch the remaining contents of the video. After the woman confessed her feelings and intentions to the creator of the universe, Fan Qianshi only responded to her confession with a pleasing smile. He rubbed the tip of her nose softly and said, "Silly girl, why should we be tied to tradition? Is there any difference between the married and us? Don't worry, you are my best creation thus far. I will surely grant you a perfect partner." There was a glimpse of disappointment in Zijia's eyes, but she soon forgot about it and continued her exploration of the universe with Fan Qianshi. Once every century, Fan Qianshi would invite Di Fui for a game of chess using the stars. Every time he did, he would take little Shijio along. When the game was ongoing, little Shijio would stay by their side and watch them. Sometimes, she would play the role of a servant and serve them water while observing their moves. At first, she knew absolutely nothing about the game and was only a quiet spectator. When it was over, she would often ask Fan Qianshi to play the game of chess with her. Hence, her skills developed over time. The next time that Fan Qianshi and Di Fui met for chess, she slowly had a grasp of their moves. Sometimes, she would play against Di Fui as well. Chapter 2682. An exaggerated plot of absurdity. 2. Di Fui did not pay much attention to her at first. She was merely a stranger who was irrelevant to him. Her talent, however, managed to impress him, so he did not mind having her as an opponent for a game or two. Over time, Di Fui grew fond of her. When he went fishing in the Milky Way, he would very often catch certain fishes that possessed an immense source of spiritual power and also tasted good. He would reserve his good catches specifically for Gu Shijio. The two men never needed any food, so Gu Shijio would finish most of the fish on her own. Day after day, her spiritual power gradually increased. As the video progressed, Gu Shijio realized that everything in the universe was still in perfect harmony. The main difference was that Di Fui seemed to fancy Shijio, the girl whom he called as his young, little apprentice. They no longer only played chess together. Instead, they would often travel from galaxy to galaxy together. Those were happy days for both of them. Soon, Di Fui started looking at Shijio differently. In return, Shijio seemed to be quite attached to Di Fui as well, whom she called her big brother in purple robes. However, Zijia's heart still belonged to Fan Qianshi. She would propose to him every few centuries, but Fan Qianshi was never in a hurry to tie the knot. As time went by, Shijio grew to have a slight feeling of resentment towards Fan Qianshi, so she started spending more time with Di Fui instead. Slowly, Di Fui realized that he had indeed fallen in love with the little girl. However, what Shijio had for Di Fui was merely the bond between a brother and a sister. She never took him as a lover. One day, Di Fui finally proposed to Shijio. He wanted her by his side, always and forever. Shijio finally realized how Di Fui felt about her, but she clearly knew that the man she loved was Fan Qianshi, so she turned away from his proposal. Di Fui was never worried about rejection. Therefore, the two of them still traveled around and explored places together. He would take her to different wine tastings in the mortal world, or share some heavenly wine with her that he had personally fermented. Feeling comfortable with the man, Shijio never had her guard up with him. One time, she got drunk while consuming heavenly wine and found herself high with euphoria. That night, they finally broke the barrier and had sex with each other. It was already too late for her by the time her sobriety returned. Without a choice, she had to agree to Di Fui's proposal. They went to meet Fan Qianshi and asked if he could marry them in the ceremony. The news struck Fan Qianshi like a sudden bolt of lightning. He could not find a word to express his astonishment by what had happened. In the end, he helplessly agreed to preside over their wedding ceremony. Nonetheless, Fan Qianshi still felt the need to talk to Di Fui in private. He told Di Fui about his responsibility as the master of heavenly law. As the man who governed the rise or fall of the universe, he should never have any inclination or prejudice against anyone. Emotions should be avoided at all costs, or else it would be difficult for him to be fair and objective with all his decisions. Should he get distracted by love, all 6 worlds would be in chaos. In other words, the master of heavenly law should never be in love. He should refrain from having any emotions. However, Di Fui was allowed to marry Shijio under one condition, which was to resign from his position as the master of heavenly law. Di Fui, however, never believed a word that he was told. He made the heavenly laws, so there should not be any violation even if he insisted on getting married. In fact, he treated Fan Qianshi's word of advice with contempt. As the master of heavenly law, he proceeded with the wedding without the man's blessing. The heavenly law had come into existence for many years, so it had become the principle that paved the way for everything to flourish in the universe. It was the laws that should be obeyed by all. Not even the master of heavenly law had the power to escape it. True enough, as soon as Di Fui and Shijio were married, all worlds started falling apart. Natural or man-made calamities haunted many places. Most lands were disintegrated and torn by dissension. The 6 worlds were in a state of complete disorder. Eventually, Di Fui chose to believe in Fan Qianshi's warning. There were only 2 solutions. The first option was to break up with Shijio, so his power as the master of heavenly law would be restored. And the second option was to surrender his power as the master of heavenly law and let Fan Qianshi assume the role. Chapter 2683. An exaggerated plot of absurdity. 3. Di Fui took some time to consider his options and decided not to surrender his power. He stayed away from Shijio and started abusing her emotionally. Although Shijio never loved the man, she was troubled and distressed by the abuse. Nonetheless, she was too embarrassed to ask Fan Qianshi's help. Hence, she chose to endure the pain on her own. To replace her, Di Fui ascended a few celestial beings and brought them into the divine kingdom. He even kept these women as his concubines for pleasure. They were all young and lively. But more importantly, they treated Di Fui well. Di Fui treated them with equal kindness, but still chose to mistreat Shijio. He made up many excuses to dismiss Shijio from her position as the empress. Eventually, she became a concubine and was bullied by the other concubines. Shijio always held herself aloof from the world, but the long-term torment changed her. She used to dress in white to appear elegant and refined. However, her change of character had affected her style. Eventually, she became more inclined to dress in black. In a way, the continuous abuse slowly killed her spirit and made her look dark and haggard. The master of heavenly law was allowed to have multiple wives as long as no emotions were involved. As he managed to rid his feelings for Shijio, soon, peace slowly returned to all 6 worlds. Di Fui was finally happy that things had returned to normal. He was pleased with the changes he made and the results he obtained. He clearly indulged in his life of many wives. Sometimes he would go to see Shijio and even stay the night. Being bitterly disappointed in him, Shijio would resist him every time he visited. Soon, their difficult relationship became deadlocked. When Fan Qianshi visited them, he finally saw how depressed Shijio had become. Utterly offended, he could not stand the sight of the woman he treasured being abused by another man. He had to talk to Di Fui about it. The talk did not go well, and the two men ended up in a big fight, which caused a state of chaos and darkness over a period of time. When two gods fought, their strength was enough to destroy the whole world. Di Fui's concubines were among the victims of the clash. Neither side gained from the fight, but Fan Qianshi suffered a little less. He seized the chance and took Shijio away and brought her back to his divine palace. When Shijio got back to his home, she finally understood that Fan Qianshi only turned down her proposal because he was preparing a surprise for her. He was busy preparing their bridal chamber, but a strange combination of circumstances had led her to Di Fui instead. Shijio was filled with remorse and sadness. Soon, she became ill. Fan Qianshi never left her side and took good care of her. In the end, he told her to break up with Di Fui if he refused to treasure her as his wife. Fan Qianshi also promised to marry her and that he would not mind her past marriage. He fell in love with who she was, not her body. Shijio entertained the idea and finally decided to talk with Di Fui about their divorce. Never had she thought that she was putting herself in a perilous position. Di Fui did not want to let go of his power, nor did he want to see her getting married to another man. Therefore, he resorted to a third option. First, he showed her around in the galaxy. They then traveled to the mortal world, and he took her to see all of her favorite places. Shijio honestly thought that it was their farewell, which was why she agreed to go in the first place. Finally, they went to their last spot on the itinerary. They visited a lake, the place where their relationship started. It was the place where they first went boating. He took her to the blue boat again and slowly sailed on the lake with her. He even asked if she had any wishes that he could fulfill for her. Shijio told him that her only wish was to break up with him so that she could return to Fan Qianshi. With a smile, Di Fui opened his arms as he replied, "All right, I shall grant you your wish. Let's hug for the last time as a farewell." Chapter 2684, An Exaggerated Plot of Absurdity. 4. Shijio thought about it and decided to hug him. Little did she know that those were the last moments of her life. Di Fui drew out a blue knife and put it straight through her heart. The knife was no ordinary weapon. It was a magical item that belonged solely to the master of heavenly law. A normal celestial being would easily die from just a small cut. Although Shijio was a semi-divine being, her body was not made to survive the attack. Moreover, the knife hit her right in her vitality point. She immediately fell into his arm as she had barely any strength left to stand or push him away. Di Fui took her in one arm with gentleness and whispered in her ear, "Shijio, I will never let you marry someone else. You belong to me. If we cannot be together until the very end, I will have to destroy you. Even in your next life, I will not let you go. I will pursue you until you choose to commit yourself irredeemably to me." He gently conveyed his cruel and unrelenting message. Then he twisted the knife around to shatter the heart of the woman in his arms completely. Shijio finally closed her eyes with dawning recognition of her final moment. "I will never love you. Not now, not ever." That was her last message. In conclusion, the video was a dramatic story of love and death. The plot was carefully arranged with a good sense of rhythm and interesting contrasts of characters. Furthermore, the final death scene was the thrilling climax of the entire sequence. Gu Shijio got to see every expression of the characters throughout the video as everything was sharp and clear. Even the water droplets on the grass were clearly displayed. The last scene was clearly very frustrating to her. Gu Shijio clenched her fist to suppress the urge of trashing the entire screen because she had to keep watching. The scene rolled on, and Di Fui was then seen disposing of her body into a lake as soon as he killed her. There lived some fearsome and yet attractive predators in the lake that preyed on human flesh. Shijio loved eating the piranhas. It was a complete life cycle that she ended being eaten by piranhas at the end of her life. After consuming her spiritual body, the piranhas managed to transform themselves into humans. Difui looked at these piranhas and sighed. She must be alone on the dwelling path to death. You should all accompany her. He waved his sleeves and sent a flash of 7 colored rays to cover all of the piranhas in a bubble. When the light faded, the monsters disappeared as well. When all was said and done, Difui finally went to meet Fan Qianshi, who had been desperately looking for him. Fan Qianshi asked for Zygius' whereabouts, but Difui smilingly answered him with another question. You have only created her to lure me with her beauty, haven't you? Fan Qianshi hesitated before admitting, only in the beginning. I have surrendered my heart to her now. She should not become a tool in our fight. Let her go. I shall live with her in seclusion and keep her away from any sort of fuss. You are still going to be the master of heavenly law. I am willing to give up the fight for her. Where is she now? Let her go. Dead, Difui softly said. What? Fan Qianshi's eyes became instantly tinged with blood. Don't you think I am aware that she was the root of all our troubles? The root of all troubles must not be kept. She needed to go. Fan Qianshi, she and I were once in love. She was once mine, so her heart and her body will forever be mine, not anyone else's. You will never be with her, even though you used to be the one she loved, Difui cruelly said. Chapter 2685. I almost fell asleep. Fan Qianshi started trembling. He quickly made some checks and realized that the man had indeed killed Shijio. He was insanely angered and quickly got into another fight with Difui. The fight ended with Fan Qianshi's defeat. Severely injured, he struggled his way back to the Divine Palace. From there, he started meditating in an attempt to collect Zygius' broken souls. The piranhas completely consumed Zygius' body. Even her soul was shattered into tiny bits. Unfortunately, Fan Qianshi was unable to collect all the pieces of her soul. He looked at the scattered bits that he managed to collect and said, Shijio, I will be sure to bring you back to life, even if it costs me all of my power. He stood up and disappeared along with her remaining soul fragments that he found. The display then showed a different era, where Long Fan first made his appearance. He was the mad scientist who committed his life to make clones. Scientific experiments were his obsessions, though not all his clones were successful. It was only on the rare occasions that a clone was well made, like Long Shi, who was later known as Long Sai. One day, Long Fan was able to create a tiny fetus in his laboratory. He then transferred the fetus into the body of Mrs. Yi through the use of black magic. That was how Yi Hongfeng came to life. Long Fan ran some readings on Yi Hongfeng's body and was quite satisfied with his creation. Shijio, I will make you a perfect body, he murmured. Soon, he became determined to spend more time in his laboratory to fulfill his objective. It did not take long before another cloned baby started growing in the ice coffin. When the body was ready, Long Fan carefully placed Zygius' remaining souls into the body of the clone. Soon, the baby slowly came alive. Long Fan looked at the baby who had just woken up and said smilingly, Shijio, welcome back. Shijio, welcome back. A magnetic voice could be heard in the background as a man slowly appeared on the screen. His robes were as black as the night sky, embellished with starry patterns that glistened charmingly under the lights. He let his long, silky hair down, but that did not take the attention away from his beautifully crafted face. He looked flawless. He slowly walked out from the screen and landed gracefully in front of Gu Shijio. He was Fan Qianshi, the creator of the universe. Gu Shijio sat looking at him, expressionless. So you're the tricky one behind all of this. Tricky? No, all I ever wanted was for you to come back alive. Fan Qianshi looked at her intensely. He took 2 steps forward and stopped about a meter away from her. What are your thoughts after watching the video? Inexcusably lousy acting and a mediocre script. Any hardworking writer can easily produce a better piece. I almost fell asleep, Gu Shijio teased. She could not care less about the story. Don't you believe it? He did not look guilty. Instead, he looked at her with a sense of sympathy and asked, "Are you too afraid to believe it?" Gu Shijio gave him a tight smile. "I do not care what you think." She couldn't believe in a story with so many flaws. Did he think of her as a fool? Difui would never do such things. If he had chosen power over her, why would he give his everything just to protect her? He even chose to have his existence wiped away in order for her to fulfill her destiny. All the stories about his ungratefulness and lack of feelings must be made up. Chapter 2686. The fallacies and absurdities. Although Gu Shijio was confident that the parts about Difui were absurd, she also suspected that the rest of the video clip could have been designed to fool her. Nonetheless, there were a few key points that deserved her attention. Difui was the master of heavenly law, and Fan Qianshi was indeed the creator of the universe. So the story about the savage feud between these two must be true. As for the origin of Difui, Gu Shijio somewhat believed that the truth was not that simple. She found the explanation unreliable, though she did not have any evidence to support her point of view at that moment. What was of greater urgency was the emergence of Fan Qianshi from the screen. It seemed like Long Fan, the mad scientist, was one of his many identities. The sight of the man hit her in panic, but she remained calm and composed on the surface. As the creator of the universe, the level of Fan Qianshi's kung fu must be unfathomable. Even as a great deity, she was not confident that she could defeat him. Furthermore, she was trapped in an enclosure that was possibly designed specifically to confine her. There must be something that he wanted from her, and without an airtight plan, there was no way she could escape on her own. Fan Qianshi took another step closer to her, but she refused to be intimidated. She held her ground and asked, "Were you the one that led the people of Blue Fox Planet here? Why would you want to do so? Simply to destroy the place?" Fan Qianshi answered with a scornful smile. "Why can't I? I do not appreciate the lives of the people on this continent. The reshuffling is necessary for the survival of the fittest. These filthy human species should not be occupying such a wealthy land. You do not sound like a creator of lives. In fact, you seem more like a demon." Fan Qianshi took a look at his pinkish fingers. There was a huge ring on his middle finger that took the shape of a half-closed eye, which was quite a terrifying sight. "I have created everything in this world, so I get to decide if they should stay or go. By taking away the undeserving, I'm actually making space for the good ones to develop." "Shijio, you are too soft-hearted." "Really? If you are really that powerful, why didn't you act as soon as you realized that the people here have become unfavorable to you? Furthermore, do you not even have the courage to face me in a fair fight? Is this what the creator of the universe should do? Don't you think this is too dishonorable for a man like you?" Fan Qianshi sat down across the table and poured her a drink. "Here, try this wine." Gu Shijio obviously noticed the overwhelming fragrance of tea in the air, so she looked at him in contempt and said, "Are you sure that your nose is all right? This clearly is a cup of tea." Fan Qianshi disarmed her with a smile. "It could be a cup of tea or a cup of wine. Those are just ways of naming it. What if they chose to name it as a cup of wine instead of tea? Rules are man-made, and so are the names given to everything. So, why can't I name it the way I want to?" The idea sounded rather complicated, but Gu Shijio was smart enough to grasp it. "Are you trying to say that if mankind has decided all that is right or wrong, then these rules and definitions should be abolished as well?" "Smart." Impressed, Fan Qianshi clasped his hands in admiration of her wits. "These rules and regulations are from the heavenly law, which is a set of laws that Difui has developed over time. Why should I behave within the frame that he has set? I have my own ways of dealing with people and things." He tried to make his morally distorted behavior sound legitimate. Gu Shijio answered in all frankness, "In that case, I am actually glad that you are not the master of heavenly law. Otherwise, the world would be in chaos." Chapter 2687. She never knew that she was pieced together. Fan Qianshi was slightly taken aback by her remark. "Shijio, you have been brainwashed by this version of the heavenly law. I really regret everything that has happened. What do you regret? I should not have let you live your life in a common place. I should never have let you spend so much time with Di Fui. I should have taken you away the moment you were created. Fan Chincher sighed. Gu Shijio slowly swirled the cup in her hand as she listened. You could not take me with you, even if you wanted to. After a slight pause, he continued, Shijio, you have always been very bright. However, you are mistaken this time. I could have easily taken you away, but I was not allowed to. When Di Fui murdered you, I only managed to collect 2 pieces of your fragmented soul. The rest of your soul was scattered in every possible corner of the world. In order for you to come back as a whole, I needed to collect all the pieces of your soul. I knew that it was going to be a long and difficult process. Yi Hongfeng possessed a piece of your soul. Gu Shijio, the daughter of General Gu from Starry Crescent Land, had a piece of you. As for the rest, I already collected them all from many different places. These broken pieces had to be regrouped and placed in a clone body. As Long Fan, I strive to transfer all the pieces of your soul into one body so that you could finally be revived as a whole. Gu Shijio did not know how to react to that. She never knew that she was pieced together in that way. If that were true, perhaps there was nothing that this man could not achieve if he were willing to take the risk. While she tried to find a way to escape, she continued to distract him by pointing out the fallacies in his false story. You're only trying to find excuses for all the wrongdoings that you have committed over the years. Stop glorifying yourself. This part of your acting is totally pointless. You did not wait this long to destroy the Starry Crescent Land because you were merciful. The truth is, you could not find a way to make the invasion happen. Di Fui had been here long enough to keep out the people of Blue Fox Planet or the Silver Fox Planet. However, you want to call that damn planet. My return from the upper bound was delayed for 2 years, which opened up a window for you to get through the wizardry barrier, thus making the land vulnerable to an alien invasion. Am I right? Fan Qianshi was a little surprised by her analysis. Shijio, you really are the brightest. He could not help but compliment her. In a way, he also confessed his sins indirectly. Gu Shijio looked at him in disbelief, for his confession had come too soon. Perhaps there were more secrets that she had yet to uncover. Were you the one who brought the Blue Fox family here many years ago? She suddenly asked. Fan Qianshi only gave her a smile in reply. He let her make her own guess. The hypocrite would not give out any significant information to her, so she had to find her own clues. Gu Shijio had once studied about the existence of the Blue Fox family. Their origin dated back 13,000 years ago. As far as she knew, Di Fui had been around about 10,200 years ago. The Blue Fox family was more primitive than him in terms of their time spent in the Starry Crescent Land. They were here about 3,000 years ahead of Di Fui. They must have come with advanced technology, but never properly utilized any of it. Hence, there must be a reason why they chose to blend in and cultivate with the locals. The Blue Fox family seemed like a tool that Fan Qianshi had placed in the continent for future use. Chapter 2688. Where are you taking me? It seemed as if the Blue Fox family were Fan Qianshi's pawns on this continent. But he really put everything in place for this day? Was it his goal all along to invite the people from the Blue Fox planet to the Starry Crescent Land? More worryingly, Fan Qianshi seemed to have placed a specific target on Lan Wei's back. What was his ultimate purpose in doing so? Lan Weihu had lived peacefully among the people of the Starry Crescent Land. Even though Little Fox was part of the Blue Fox family's royal bloodline, that did not seem to be a good enough reason to get her so heavily involved in Fan Qianshi's plot. If the man's objective was to get back at Di Fui, how could Lan Wei's involvement achieve that? Did he plan to exploit Di Fui's feelings for Gu Shijio by putting her friend at risk? It could not be so simple, could it? Perhaps Little Fox's involvement was much greater than that. Perhaps there was something hidden from them that could change everything. Why did you put in so much effort to plot against Lan Weihu? Gu Shijio asked nonchalantly. Can you guess? Is it because you had something to benefit from her heritage? Fan Qianshi laughed. Maybe it is because she is your friend. It could also be because she is from the royal bloodline of the Blue Fox family. Perhaps I just could not bear to see her being defiled by someone of such a low class. It was clear to Gu Shiju that his explanations were unreliable. There were undoubtedly other reasons behind Little Fox's involvement. Fan Qianshi could tell immediately that Gu Shiju was not convinced. In an effort to put the conversation to rest, he sat comfortably opposite her and said, "Little Shiju, you can slowly ponder over the details. There is no hurry. Anyway, we still have a lot of time together. If you really can't guess it, I will explain it to you later on." A lot of time together? Gu Shiju got up as she did not want to stay here for a minute longer. But how could she leave? Fan Qianshi seemed to be able to read Gu Zijia's mind. He sighed. "Shiju, don't even think of leaving. In fact, we have left the starry crescent land. Look, the view of space is so nice." He waved his sleeves, and the thick wall inside the cabin progressively turned transparent. Gu Shiju could see the starry sky outside the cabin. The sky was dark blue, and there seemed to be bright stars in close proximity to the battleship. It was so close that it felt as if they could reach it with a stretch of their hands. The scenery was beautiful. However, Gu Zijia's facial expression changed abruptly. "Where are you going to take me?" "Back to my palace." "Shiju, that is where you're going to get married. The place has been ready for a long time." Gu Shiju remained silent. She recalled what she had seen in the video. Fan Qianshi's palace was located far away from heaven and earth. It was not on the celestial devil continent, nor the Shuro world. It was also not close to the starry crescent land. "Is your palace located on the Blue Fox planet?" Fan Qianshi shook his finger at her. "Of course not. Although life on the Blue Fox star is very decent, it is not good enough for me to consider building my palace there. You will understand when you get there." Gu Shiju took a light breath and then sneered. "Do you really need this high-tech spacecraft just to go back to your planet?" Fan Qianshi looked at her and shook his head. "Of course not. However, I needed to bring Lan Weihu with me, so we still need to use it." "Lan Weihu? Was she also on this ship?" At that moment, there was a sound coming behind the screen. "Shiju." Gu Shiju looked up and saw Lan Weihu slowly come out from the screen and land on the ground. The lady looked sweet and pretty. She was the fake Lan Weihu that stayed with Yinshun for more than a month. Di Fui had just cured Little Fox of the venomous spell that was cast on her. All of a sudden, he heard loud, cheering noises coming from the distance. So he subconsciously looked up to check what was going on. He saw an odd dish-shaped ship rising from the Blue Fox clan, breaking through the wizardry barrier of the Blue Fox clan and advancing into the sky. Chapter 2689. The Devil's Fetus, What Was That? Although Di Fui was very knowledgeable, he had never seen anything like it before. After all, he had just returned to the Starry Crescent Land and rushed here as soon as he could. He had no idea how drastically things had changed during the time that he was away. He only had a faint feeling that the aura on this continent had changed without having any time to investigate it. As he watched the spaceship fly over him, he subconsciously wanted to attach himself to it. He had always been a curious man and liked to chase after anomalies. For a long time, he had wanted to find something that could pique his interest. This metal, silvery, and shiny object that could fly had certainly triggered his curiosity. "Father, Little Fox does not seem to be okay. Can you cure her first?" Di Hao hugged Di Fui's leg to prevent him from leaving. Di Fui looked down at his son, who was looking back at him with a pair of big eyes. His request seemed to be genuine. Di Fui was aware that his son was not very kind-hearted. He would certainly not bother about saving two people who he had never met. Therefore, he must have his reasons to keep Di Fui here. In the end, Di Fui suppressed his curiosity and looked at Little Fox to see what else was wrong with her. After a brief analysis, his heart pounded in his chest. He stepped forward and quickly looked at her face to assess the situation better. His eyebrows were furrowed. His intense gaze certainly worried Lan Weihu. Subconsciously, she took a step back and checked, "What happened to me?" She seemed to realize something was wrong. "Celestial Masters, my body seems to have been replaced." She then raised her hand and observed it carefully. This body should not be mine. This body is yours. Ah. Lan Weihu opened her eyes widely after that remark. She was aware that there was an impostor around Yin Chun that looked similar to her. Lan Weihu also knew that her appearance had gradually changed. Where's her baby? She could not seem to recollect her memories, as Duan Mayan had often controlled her. After pondering for a moment, she said, I have been pregnant for more than 4 months. If this is my body, then my belly should be visible, but it is flat. Lan Weihu offered her hand to Di Fui so that he could diagnose her by reading her pulse. After a moment, Di Fui let go of her hand and faintly said, You have never been pregnant. Lan Weihu was stunned and blurted out, How come? I have had morning sickness for some time, and the doctor at Tianju Hall had also told me that I was pregnant. Before I was captured, my stomach was already slightly bulged. Di Fui continued, That is because you are pregnant with a devil's fetus. Lan Weihu remained silent, but was clearly stunned by the revelation. Di Fui gave her a brief explanation. This devil fetus is born from a kind of devil magic. It is not a real fetus, but a fetus-like object that is formed by an evil aura. If nothing triggers it, then it will grow in you quietly like a human fetus and get bigger and bigger as time passes. However, once it is triggered, it will gradually integrate into your blood, eroding your spirituality and causing your temperament to get more and more gloomy. You would even thirst for blood. If I am not mistaken, you have been eating living creatures lately by sucking their blood and eating their flesh, right? Chapter 2690. The Devil's Fetus 2. Lan Wei's face was pale. She nodded slightly in response to Di Fui's statement and replied, Yes, you are right. It will slowly change your appearance, and eventually, you will look like your ancestors. Looking at your appearance, I would suspect that you originated from the noblest bloodline of the Blue Fox family 10,000 years ago. Lan Wei blurted, I don't want to look like my ancestors. I want to look like my old self. Your appearance will naturally return to normal once you remove the devil fetus from your body. You don't have to worry. Lan Weihu closed her eyes slightly after hearing this reply. She had mixed feelings in her heart about what was happening to her. On the one hand, she had certainly been looking forward to having a baby. However, she accidentally saw the fake Lan Weihu once and noticed that she was pregnant too. She thought that they had swapped bodies, but her baby was still alive and well in her body as well. She did not expect that. She suddenly thought of something and hurriedly asked, Celestial Masters, is the fake Lan Weihu also pregnant? Can you ask Yin Chun? Yin Chun was currently executing the orders given to him by Di Fui. He meditated silently and was oblivious to the entire conversation. Di Fui looked at him and knew at once that he was at a critical stage of his meditation. Therefore, instead of disturbing him, he asked Lan Weihu, What has happened? Tell me the full story. Lan Weihu did not dare to keep any information from Di Fui. She told him everything about the invasion of the people from Blue Fox Planet, as well as when she was caught. She was able to verbalize the entire story to him, succinctly and concisely. Later, she elaborated on the most recent incident involving Yin Chun. Celestial Masters, while I was drinking with Duan Mayan and the soldiers, I was able to see Yin Chun and the fake Lan Weihu. She really looks the same as how I used to, and her belly seemed to match that of a mother who had been pregnant for a month. Otherwise, Yin Chun would not have been so easily fooled. She sounded a little bitter after her last remark. Di Fui looked down and pinched his fingers together in his sleeve. He pondered for a while before asking, Is your fetus a switching venomous mother fetus? Lan Weihu looked at him with a confused face. Apparently, she did not understand his question. Since returning to the Starry Crescent Land, Di Fui's priority was to get rid of the people from the Blue Fox Planet. He wanted to return the order to the land as soon as possible. However, if this were really a switching venomous mother fetus, it would be a disaster to the world. His priority would have to be Lan Weihu. If the fetus in Lan Wei's belly were a mother fetus, its evil characteristics would make her gradually lose her own nature. The fetus was known to make its host violent and murderous. In fact, every evil act they carried out would only feed power to the fetus. When it developed, it would be uncontrollable. The person who was pregnant with a mother fetus would be easily provoked and caught in a state of hysteria all the time. It was likely that she would do things that she would regret for a lifetime. Unfortunately, the pregnant individual will remember everything that they did despite not having control over it. Distraught by the evil things they would have done, the child fetus would continue to strengthen from the misery of its host. Once the child fetus matured, it would automatically evolve into a real devil fetus. This kind of devil fetus was incredibly pure. Because of this, it would be extremely fierce and inclined to kill. Whether someone was a god or a human, once this devil fetus infected her, the person would ultimately lose their memory and control over their body. What was even worse was that the victim might eventually lose their life, and their soul would be sealed into the devil fetus for its nourishment. Di Fui had never seen this type of switching venomous mother fetus before. He was only told about this by his mother a few years ago. Ning Shumao was the great devil and was very knowledgeable with regards to these things. She had subordinates who were masters of venom and familiar with this kind of poison. Chapter 2691. The Devil's Fetus 3. Fortunately, it required quite exceptional conditions to grow this venom. It needed the mother to have an extraordinary bloodline, and the child had to be specially crafted to be the same as the mother. For Ning Suimo's subordinate, the master of venoms did not succeed in growing one, but she still remembered his action. While Ning Shumao and Shun Jiuli were touring the universe, they had paid a visit to the Blue Fox Star, where she and Shun Jiuli were attacked by a devil fetus. Fortunately, both of them had great skills. In fact, Ning Shumao did not even need his protection, as she was highly capable. Thus, they could stay safe from the danger. Later, they investigated the origin of this kind of devil fetus and finally found that it was successfully cultivated by the royal family on the Blue Fox planet. It was said that they sacrificed a pair of twin daughters to grow it. The twins looked precisely the same and married outsiders from a clan, which led to their inevitable punishment by the royal family. They grew the switching venomous mother fetus on the elder sister and the child fetus on the younger sister. To trigger the evil elements in the elder sister, they did an extremely torturous act to her. The royal family had induced her to kill her most beloved husband so that she would turn insane once she regained control over her body. Having remembered the murderous act, she decided to take her own life by removing her heart. Despite taking her own life, her powers seemed to have shifted to the child fetus in her young sister. In the end, the child fetus became a devil fetus and became a powerful assassin for the Blue Fox Royals to deal with any outsiders. Shun Jiuli and Ning Shumao were both great deities, so their skills were one of the highest in the world. Yet, they could barely fight against the devil fetus even though they worked together. It proved that the devil fetus was really powerful. Lan Weihu was definitely from the bloodline of the Blue Fox planet. She, too, had married an outsider. She even almost killed Yin Shun. This was scarily similar to what his mother had once told him. A cold sweat suddenly broke out on Di Fui's forehead. If he had come a little later and Lan Weihu had killed Yin Shun, the devil fetus in her body would have been formed. He re-examined Lan Weihu's pulse just to be sure of her current status. The mother fetus was still in her body. However, perhaps because he had purified it, the mother fetus had already shrunk into a small ball, and the grievances that were attached to it had been sucked away. Fortunately, Lan Weihu did not kill her beloved by mistake. Quickly, Di Fui placed his palm on her belly and said, "I will take out the mother fetus from you. It will be slightly painful. Please bear with me." His aura was too strong for Lan Weihu to turn him down. She did not dare to say anything and just nodded in reply. Di Fui's palm lit up as his hand waysat Lan Weihu's abdomen. It was now her turn to have a cold sweat break out on her forehead. The pain was excruciating. Fortunately, Lan Weihu had suffered a lot these days. Therefore, She was not so easily susceptible to pain. After 15 intense minutes, Di Fui finally finished the job. The colorful light from his palm had successfully sucked out a baby that was the size of a thumb from the belly of Lan Weihu. To their surprise, this baby had 4 eyes on its face and looked extremely fierce. It struggled and screamed in Di Fui's palm. Its 4 eyes seemed to be exuding a cold light, which would make an ordinary person tremble just at a glance. Meanwhile, Lan Weihu looked like she just soaked herself in water due to the sweat from her body. When she first saw this baby, she was terribly concerned that Di Fui might have misdiagnosed her and removed her own baby. Nonetheless, when she saw the 4 eyes of the baby, she involuntarily stepped back from the scene. When the creature saw Lan Weihu, it screamed even more fiercely. It struggled in Di Fui's palm and suddenly grew a pair of wings to fly over to her. Chapter 2692. The Devil's Fetus 4. This underdeveloped fetus screeched shrilly to the point where Yin Shun was awakened from his meditation. He opened his eyes and saw this creature at first glance. Naturally, the man was stunned. What is this? Di Fui did not have time to answer him. The colorful light in the palm slowly brightened and twisted the creature. With his level of skill, this effort should be able to crush the creature, but he did not expect it to have the properties of water. It could twist into different shapes according to his spiritual power. Out of the blue, Di Hao tugged at Di Fui's sleeve and sheepishly said, "Father, its eyes are too scary. I'm scared just looking at it." Di Fui looked at the boy somewhat confusedly. Since when was this kid so timid? When he came to his senses, he asked his son, "Should I poke its eyes?" Di Hao shook his head. "I think it's probably afraid of broiled. If you burn it, perhaps it will not be able to open its eyes anymore." Di Fui did not ask any further questions. Instantaneously, there were a few hot flames in the colorful light in his palm that baked the 4 eyes of that thing had. The unformed creature finally turned into ashes and disappeared. After getting rid of the fetus, Di Fui asked, "Where is the fake Lan Weihu?" He had to remove the magic fetus in her belly quickly. Otherwise, he could not even imagine what chaos would strike them. By that time, Yinshin had more or less caught up with the situation after Lan Weihu had briefly explained it to him. He was definitely shocked for a moment. I was too nervous at the time and left her in the Blue Fox clan. Let me accompany you to go back and look for her." "No, you and Lan Weihu need to return to Tianju Hall. I can go by myself." Yinshin was still severely injured. The man had to go back and rest in order to recuperate, so Di Fui did not want to bring him along. Fortunately, Yinshin also understood his own condition. Even if he went together with Di Fui, he could not be of much help, so he agreed with him. However, he suddenly recalled something and quickly said, "Celestial Masters, Shijio is still inside and has not come out yet." Di Fui was stunned. "Bastard, why didn't you tell me earlier?" Di Fui almost wanted to punch Yin Shun. Consequently, Yin Shun felt wronged by the situation. In fact, Celestial Masters came to rescue him in a hurry and asked him not to talk. He had been meditating silently, so how could he have the chance to say it? Nonetheless, he dared not complain. In as few words as possible, he told Di Fui what happened and where he last saw Gu Shijio. When Di Fui heard the story, he guessed that Gu Shijio was trying to cause a commotion so that Yin Shun could escape. That was probably the reason that she started up the battleship and created chaos. Seconds later, he recalled the monster ship that just flew away. Thinking about what might have happened made him sick in the stomach. He turned and immediately disappeared without even taking Di Hao with him. The baby boy was left dismayed inside. It seemed like his father had left him once again. Fortunately, the muscle and Lu Wu were present, so Di Hao rode on Lu Wu and patted his head. He ordered, "Let's go. We have to chase after my unreliable father." The big muscle also wanted to follow, but it was turned away by Di Hao. "You need to send these 2 people back first. Remember, you have to send them back in good condition. We will meet again when we return." Swiftly, the boy flew away on Lu Wu. The big muscle was speechless. It missed its owner very badly and was eager to see her. However, it did not dare to violate the order given to it by the little demon. It reluctantly let Yin, Chun, and Lan Weihu jump into its shell and carried them back to Tianju Hall. Di Fui went directly to the Blue Fox clan. The place was undoubtedly in a state of chaos. Chapter 2693. The Devil's Fetus 5. The soldiers of Blue Fox Planet watched their marshal's spaceship rise into the air. Initially, they thought that he was trying to find the female lord. However, in the end, the battleship had instantly disappeared. This made the soldiers very puzzled, as they did not know what their marshal was doing. None of them could contact him either, as he did not seem to answer his directed audio spell. While the soldiers were still trying to fathom what was going on, a strong wind blew at them, and a man in purple appeared out of thin air. Although Guan Yining did not know the identity of this man, he was sure that he was an enemy. Finally, he had found somewhere to release his pent-up frustrations. He immediately ordered his subordinates to shoot the man down. As a result, they were all abused by the man in purple. In just 5 minutes, all the guns in their hands had been seized by the purple-robed man and turned into debris right in his palm. Guan Yining was explicitly called out by Di Fui. He was pressed on the ground and had no chance to get up. Di Fui gave him 2 choices. Either he used the fewest words possible to report the whereabouts of Gu Shijio, or he would die and turn into chunks of meat. Obviously, Guan Yining sold out his colleague and reported what he knew of Gu Shijio. She had used a special method to destroy many of our warships here, but I honestly have no idea where she is hiding. What happened to the ship that just flew away? We don't know. That is the ship that belongs to our marshal. Inexplicably, it suddenly flew away and disappeared. This is something that has never happened before. If you're wondering whether Gu Shijio took control of the ship, it is very unlikely. No one can go up to the ship except for the marshal, and the operating system in that ship is different from our other warships. If you haven't studied it, you can't operate it. Even if Gu Shijio entered the cockpit, she would not have been able to drive it away. Nonetheless, we have no idea why our marshal would suddenly run away. Di Fui interrupted him. Can you locate it? Yes, we can mark the location between each warship. Very good. Di Fui took him up to a battleship and said, "Bring me to him." Guan Yining was speechless. However, under the intense aura of the man who instructed him, he did not even dare to fart. Just when he was about to start the battleship, the door was suddenly banged behind them. He was shocked and quickly opened the door. Which bastard? Stunned, the man could not finish his sentence. A beautiful little doll pushed him away and walked in with a very fierce beast. "Father, we want to go too." The officer was still confused by what was going on and was very curious. He asked, Mister, may I ask who you are?" The skill of this fellow was too terrifying. It was beyond what he could comprehend. When did the Starry Crescent Land have so many top masters? Gu Shijio had single-handedly already been a headache to them. But now there was another master here. Guan Yining could not help but feel that his dream of conquering the Starry Crescent Land was getting farther and farther from him. "In the former Lord, Huang, Tuesday," Di Fui calmly replied. Then, he added, "The price for me to answer you is that you have to chase after that warship. If you don't pay your end of the deal, I will throw you down from the sky." Guan Yining was clearly stunned by the response. He had not expected there to be another lord in this land. If he had known that 2 great masters were guarding the Starry Crescent Land, he would never want to come in the first place. "Yes, Lord Huang. Don't worry. I am a master at chasing people." Guan Yining immediately began to locate the ship. After a moment, his face turned green. It has already left Starry Crescent Land. In fact, it is now in space. Di Fui did not understand the context of what he meant. He only cared about one thing. "Can you catch up to them?" "Of course. Even if it goes to the horizon, I can locate it." Guan Yining was beaming with confidence. Chapter 2694 looked so disinterested in actuality. Guan Yining was also a little curious about what was going on. In fact, he was a bit angry as well. The marshal had always regarded him as a confidant. He told him everything that was going on in the past. Many of their plans were formed together. Things took a turn about 2 months ago when the marshal suddenly fainted out of the blue. When he regained consciousness, he seemed to be a changed man. The most obvious difference was that the marshal was a lot colder to him. He did not talk much with him and always made excuses to leave. Also, he did not really care about his subordinates anymore. Despite losing so many comrades and warships, the man seemed oddly calm. The original marshal was extremely protective of his subordinates. What was even more ridiculous was the fact that he adopted a cat. The cat looked very ordinary, but the marshal treated it like a baby. He patted it so horribly that its tail was always upright. There was once when the cat sleeping in the middle of a pathway and Guan Yining accidentally stepped on the cat's tail. The cat jumped and scratched him with its paw. He subconsciously tossed the cat aside, but the marshal saw his action. As a result, the marshal also flung him to a wall and almost crushed his spine. The cat's life was more valuable than his life. This realization made Guan Yining sad. He simply could not fathom how his comrade's behavior had changed so drastically. It was as if an evil spirit had possessed him. Ever since Lan Weihu had been seized, the marshal had been tormenting her. He tortured the little girl and turned her into a devil, even though he knew that she was a princess on the Blue Fox planet. Was it right to torture a princess this way? Even though they were thieves, these interstellar pirates from the Blue Fox planet had their own principles. Duan Mayan's recent actions were violating their moral creed. In just over 2 months, Guan Yining's team felt separated from the marshal. The fact that he had taken off into space without even notifying him or his men simply amplified the severity of the issue. Therefore, even if Di Fui did not force him to travel to space, he would have gone ahead to investigate the matter himself. Guan Yining wanted to know what the marshal was up to. Without being instructed by Di Fui, Guan Yining had been steering the ship as fast as he could. It was traveling at its maximum speed. Nonetheless, he could not help but look at Di Fui, who sat next to him. This great god was supporting his head with one hand and looked a little lazy. He had closed his eyes and seemed to be resting. Guan Yining felt a little worried. Since this great god was a man of the Starry Crescent land and had just returned, he must have never seen such high-tech weapons and defenses. Shouldn't he be a little curious? Shouldn't he want to learn how to operate the ship? Why did he look so disinterested? The general had intentionally made his movements more visible to Di Fui while operating the warship. He wanted to show a sense of superiority in front of this god, based on how complex it was to pilot the spacecraft. Evidently, Di Fui did not care at all. This made Guan Yining feel somewhat powerless. It was as if he was trying to flirt with a blind man. "Mr. General, you are good at handling this ship." A tender child's voice praised him to save him some face. Guan Yining looked down at the little guy who sat on Di Fui. The little guy's eyes were sparkling like black grapes. He looked very sincere and innocent, which made people want to do everything for him. Guan Yining's lips curved upward proudly. "Of course, I am the best at piloting these ships. All my brothers are certainly convinced." "Are you better than the marshal?" "I don't want to sound boastful. In terms of operating the spaceship, I am more seasoned than the marshal. However, the marshal has other strengths. In fact, he can operate the spaceship without using his hands." Chapter 2695. How did he change? Like this. Di Hao blinked his eyes, and a chair started moving around Guan Yining. The general was speechless by what he saw. It seemed that the marshal's ability was not that special, after all. Di Hao was rather short due to his age, so he asked Lu Wu to squat and pick him up. Lu Wu obliged and turned into the size of a little pony as it walked toward Di Hao. The boy rode on its back so that he could talk to Guan Yining at eye level. What are your marshal's other abilities? Guan Yining was not dense to the point where he could not see through the little boy's intentions. "Are you only talking to me to get information about my marshal?" "Your marshal? Are you sure? If he really treats you as a subordinate, why would he run away and leave you all behind?" He is not running away. He must have some business to attend to right now. Why did he not inform you and your team about this business? And why is he not contactable? He must be aware that my father was present, so he opted to run away and left you all here to keep my father busy and buy him some time. I really admire how you can still stand by him and even stay loyal to him for so long. How do you do it? The two of you must have worked together for a long time, right? It must feel very suffering to work with someone like him. Guan Yining's face and neck turned reddish. What do you know about my marshal? For your information, Duan Mayan was not like this before. Really? How was he like in the past? What did he start to change? He used to be the closet brother to everyone. He was willing to do anything for us. We all drank and ate together as a community. However, 2 months ago, he had a sudden fall and fainted. We tried very hard and managed to save his life. However, when he was awake, he had completely changed. It felt like he was possessed by some kind of devil and acted very strangely. When Guan Yining mentioned that last part, there was a raging fire burning in his heart. He punched his fist on the console and was apparently a little angry. How did he change? Tell me the specific things you noticed. A strong magnetic voice was heard. Guan Yining was stunned. He subconsciously turned back and saw that Huang Tu had opened his eyes and was looking at him. Di Fui had caught him at a good time when his blood was boiling. For some reason, the general had the urge to tell the man everything that had happened. Naturally, he began to spill the beans. And, with that, Di Hao had accomplished his mission. He rode his little pony around the spaceship and returned to Di Fui's side. The little boy even climbed onto his lap. Di Fui patted his head as a reward. He always thought that the marshal came from the royal family of Blue Fox Planet. He also suspected that the man had used Lan Weihu to cultivate the devil fetus in order to conquer the continent. However, after listening to Guan Yining, he felt that it was far from being so simple. Duan Mayan's soul must have been swapped. When Di Fui guessed this, he needed to ask the general some questions. Nonetheless, he was feeling rather lazy, so he controlled Guan Yining's mind with his mental power and forced him to reveal the truth. By using a spell, Di Fui could actually read Guan Yining's memories. However, it would consume quite a lot of spiritual power to use it. He had already exhausted a lot of his spiritual power to come back to the Starry Crescent Land. After that, he used more of his power to save Yin Shun and help Lan Weihu. It was wise for him to preserve as much energy as possible. Chapter 2696. How big was the man's game of chess? Fortunately, he did not have to use a lot of spiritual power to extract the information he needed. Meanwhile, Di Hao lay quietly in his arms. His mouth was slightly tilted upward as he was satisfied with the outcome of his endeavor. Also, he wanted to get compensated for the shortcomings of his childhood. It was rare for him to enjoy fatherly love. Besides, he looked like a little boy now, so it did not look strange for him to hug his dad. Many things had changed since his return, so his parents' fate should have been improved as well, right? However, although his intervention had led to twists in the plot, things that were supposed to happen later seemed to have happened in advance. Moreover, things that had never happened before were happening now. For example, his mother was now entangled with the creator of the universe. Luckily, he knew that she was competent, but as it did not happen in the past, it was difficult to tell what would happen in the future. On the Marshall spaceship, Gu Shijiu maintained eye contact with the Lan Weihu that had emerged from the screen. She frowned as she knew that the woman in front of her was an imposter. Even if her body was genuine, this was definitely not her soul. Gu Shijiu had thought that the Lan Weihu look-alike was with Yin Shun. It definitely caught her by surprise to see the woman here. Lan Weihu smiled lightly. However, her smile was no longer the innocent one that Gu Shijiu was familiar with from Lan Weihu. Nonetheless, there was a kind of enchanting charm to it. Gu Shijiu, how are you? Gu Shijiu narrowed her eyes and asked, Wu Wu Yin. Lan Weihu startled a little and laughed. However, it was not a condescending laugh. You are indeed the Lord. I am surprised that you can recognize me so quickly. This woman had once used Gu Zijia's body to help Long fan trap Di Fui. Gu Shijiu had only had one conversation with her in the past. In fact, she has never even seen her original appearance before, but could recognize her by her uniqueness. Gu's ziggiest grip of her fingers tightened in her sleeve. She looked at her disdainfully and spoke. I never expected you to still want to work for him. Long Fan was one of Fan Qianxi's many identities. In the past, Wu Wuyin used to serve Long Fan, and now she served Fan Qianshi. She was indeed a loyal subordinate. Wu Wuyin smiled. Of course I would. I only have one master. What about Mo Zhao? Wu Wuyin shook her head before continuing. He was just a chess piece for my master. Even Mo Zhao was Fan Qianxi's pawn. How big was the man's game of chess? He used to stay beside Mo Zhao as a subordinate and listen to his every order. He just wanted to synthesize more clones. At that time, he planned everything in the dark and then pushed Mo Zhao out in the front line. He was the mastermind behind everything. He had been planning to conquer the Starry Crescent Land for over 10,000 years, as evidenced by the existence of the Blue Fox family. This was obviously one of his secret strategies while playing chess with Di Fui. He wanted to harm Di Fui when he experienced life in the Shura world. Although Di Fui was physically strong enough to defend against him, he had not restored his memory as the master of heavenly law. Therefore, it would have been easy for Fan Qianshi to kill Di Fui at the time. Why did he go one big round just to capture Di Fui? What was his real intention? Gu Shiju bit her lips at her thoughts. She did not have enough information to make an inference, so she could only guess that Fan Qian did all this to deal with Di Fui. She could not think of any other intention. Then, she looked at Wu Wuyin again. Her stomach was slightly bloated. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.